Hey everybody, welcome to another Author Show board game review. This week we're doing something a little bit differently. This week we're going to be looking at a print and play version of a game called The Gods War. Now the Gods War is created by Petersen Games. If you're not familiar with Petersen Games, they put up a couple games on Kickstarter now. The very first one, the one they're probably most well known for, is Cthulhu Wars. And if you play Cthulhu Wars or you know anything about Cthulhu Wars, some of the things in the Gods War are going to look very, very familiar for you. And I'll cover some of those in just a moment because if you've seen Cthulhu Wars and you think Gods War is going to be a lot the same, you're going to be very much surprised because this game, while of course we're just doing a print and play where we have these little stand-up, cardboard stand-ups and everything like that. And the final version of the game is going to have, just like Cthulhu Wars, instead of these cardboard stand-ups, we're going to be looking at giant 7-inch tall miniatures for the greater gods and all these different miniatures. But I'm jumping ahead of myself here. But my point is that if you're familiar with Cthulhu Wars, don't assume this is Cthulhu Wars just with a reskin because this game is very, very different. And I'll cover those differences in just a moment. But what I want to say here is that this is going to be a preview of a game that's print and play only. So like I said, all these components, nothing here is obviously not going to be the final components. The map you're going to see is just a black and white printout I had done over at Kinko's for $1, well, $1 per page. I didn't want to spend the full 40 bucks to get the full color, but I do have some color components. And I'll explain what all these things do in just a moment. But I do want to preface this video with something very important, and this is something you need to understand. This is actually the second time I'm going to be recording this introduction because in the original introduction, I had that recorded when I did this video about a week ago now, and I was hoping to get this video up sooner, but by the time this goes up, it's probably going to be about 4 days before this Kickstarter actually closes. But my original intention was to put up this video and show you some gameplay for the game. Here's a small little problem with that. Shortly after I got done recording the video, I found out that they've updated the rules. So not really a big deal because again, this is a print and play version of a game. It's not the final release version of the game. This game is constantly being worked on. If you know anything about Sandy Petersen, you understand the guy has a strong pedigree. He's been in the game design industry for about 25 or 30 years. You want to know how far back he goes? He was actually involved in the original game for Doom from id Software. So you see, he has a really long pedigree, and he's one of those kind of guys that's constantly tinkering, constantly adjusting, and trying to always create games that are very asymmetrical, but offer some very strong competitive gameplay where all the players feel very different, but every single player has an equal chance of winning the game. So I basically had two options. The first option I could do is I could go through and fully record the entire gameplay video all over again, and it's about 2 hours long. Well, getting pretty close to 2 hours long. And that didn't sound like a whole bunch of fun for me, so what I've done is I've reshot this intro to explain to you that when you're watching this gameplay video, don't feel like it's going to be a gospel of how the rules work, because I can tell you, I can guarantee you, because I've gone through the playthrough, that there are rules mistakes. Matter of fact, in the very first round, I make a mistake with the sky. I do use a power that has actually been changed, and it can't be used the way I use it anymore in the current version of the rules. It was actually a balancing decision, and it's probably a really good balancing decision because what I do with that sky player and that specific power is actually really mean and pretty much a jerk move to do. And I picked that because I thought it was a really good way to show you how all these different factions play. But I just want to let you know that this is going to be more of a video just to give you an idea of what the Gods War plays like. This is not going to be a tutorial video. This is not going to be a how-to play video. This isn't even going to be a strategy video because I'm going to guarantee you if I get two different decisions and one decision is going to be a play that's going to be something that's going to show you some different variety of the game, or a play that's going to be probably a better move, I'm going to pick the move that's going to give you a way to see more variety of the gameplay. So this isn't going to be a strategy video. This isn't going to be a how to play video. This is simply going to be a, this is Gods War. This is what the game is. It's not a reskin of Cthulhu Wars. It's definitely a different game. So now that I've mentioned it's not a reskin of Cthulhu Wars, what is different from Gods War? Well, there are quite a few differences from Gods War besides the very, very obvious ones that we have different factions here on the table. The game plays differently. Gods War is going to be a longer playing game than Cthulhu Wars, and I don't want to make this a boring video where I'm going to be comparing Gods War and Cthulhu Wars back and forth a dozen times. But I just want to give you a couple quick differences of the main gameplay things. First of all, the Gods War is going to play longer than Cthulhu Wars. It plays differently, the factions are designed differently, and they're designed more to, I don't want to say balance off each other, feed off each other, but it's definitely designed more of a back and forth style game where Cthulhu Wars was a game where players were building up, trying to take advantage of a strategy and strike a brutal strike very quickly to bring around the ending of the game. So Gods War is going to play a little bit longer, looking at maybe about 90 minutes or maybe even down to an hour for some really good Cthulhu Wars players, while the Gods War is going to average about 2 hours on your average playthrough, even when people are pretty familiar with the game. So the very important things you need to understand about the Gods War is, first of all, you're going to be rolling a lot less dice in combat. I know in Cthulhu Wars, it was common to roll 20 plus dice, sometimes in combat, especially towards the later parts of the game. And that's something that's not going to happen in Gods War, at least not with the factions that come with the base set. Now, I personally haven't seen the other factions, and I haven't watched strategy videos or done anything like that. I just basically played the game numerous times, looked at all the strategies, and played through the game with friends, and seen how some of the different factions play. So maybe I'm missing some obvious things, but I'm definitely seeing a lot less dice rolling when I'm playing this game. Also, movement is different in this game. Now, in Cthulhu Wars, you spend power and you move one unit. In this game, you're going to spend power to activate one single point of power to activate a region. And all of your units in that specific region are going to move. They don't have to all move to the same location. I could have all these units right here in this simple location right here, spend one power, send two guys over here, send two guys, over here, just like that. And that'd be a single use of power, whereas if you play Cthulhu Wars, you know that definitely not be the case. Also, this map is laid out very, very interestingly, and this is one of the big things you understand about the Gods War. Now, the Gods War is actually multiple maps all played together, and that's going to be the strange thing to understand. See, when you're playing the Gods War, you need to understand that obviously all these locations are going to be connected to each other. Land is connected to sea, sea is connected to land, and all these regions are broken down. There's no max amount of units that you can have in a specific region. But you need to understand something very interesting. This side of the board is connected to hell, and you have the outer hell and the inner hell. The only way to get out of the inner and the outer hell is by later gameplay. That can happen, or having another player let you out, which gets into a lot of the game, how this is a lot of diplomacy involved in this game. And I'd actually say there's more diplomacy in this game than in the Gods War, and you'll see that especially with the council phase that comes in the game. Again, I'll explain all that stuff in just a moment, but you need to understand that from this side of the map, you can go to the inner and the outer hell, and depending on how late the game is or any special abilities you have, you're going to come back out on this side of the map. Again, that's going to allow you to cross the map quite well with a lot less uses of power, especially since you need to spend one power to move an entire army into this section right here, spend another power to get that entire army out, again, barring certain conditions. I'm not trying to jump ahead or give you bad strategies, but let you know that can be a possibility. Also, you need to know that this spike right here, until it's destroyed and shattered, and again, I'll explain that in just a moment, but until it's shattered, it's actually connected to the sky and also to the moon. So any unit here can go to the sky or the moon, and the sky and the moon are both connected to the top of the map and to the bottom of the map, and vice versa. So if I have a unit all the way here, I can spend one power, move to the sky dome, spend another power, move to the spike, or I can go from the sky dome all the way to the other side of the map. So one really important thing you need to understand is that movement is very powerful in this game. It's a lot different from Cthulhu Wars. And not only that, there's also an island, and this is only colored piece, so it shouldn't get too confused when you're watching the map. But this island is actually moves, and it can dock with other land masses, and it can move all around the map, and any player can control as long as they have a shrine or units there. And that becomes very interesting because you can use it to move around quite well on the board, cover a lot of ground, unload all your units, and again, get across the board very, very quickly. So it's something that's very cool about this game is you can get around very, very quickly, and it's something a lot of players will have trouble learning when they're first learning the game. The fact that you can't forget that you got the sky dome and the moon, the fact that you got the inner and the outer hell, and that you can go in and out of these locations and really travel across this map very, very well. The other thing to understand is that you have these runes. Now, in Cthulhu Wars, you had the Elder Signs, which are getting anywhere from 1 to 3 victory points, and they're basically a random draw, and you can basically cash them in anytime you want. Well, these runes are going to give you victory points, but every one of these is also mostly going to have special powers, and these are all random, and you're going to draw them randomly as you play the game, and you can play them after or between any player's turn, which can be very, very good strategies. So if I'm the Sky player and we're going in a clockwise fashion, Sky takes his turn, Chaos takes his turn. After Chaos takes his turn, the Sky player could play a rune that may kill a unit from the Storm faction, or kill a unit from the Chaos faction if they happen to have a rune that does something like that. Or it can start a battle, they do things like that. So these runes are going to add a little bit of strategy and a little bit of tension in the game, because once you learn the game and learn all these runes, you look across the table and see the opponent start smiling as you're moving things, and it's not even their turn. You can pretty much imagine if they have a rune in their hand, that's going to make your life very, very difficult. Every turn in the Gods War is going to be played out pretty much the same way, but you're going to see that the game plays out very interestingly. Now, every round is broken down into 3 phases, and the first phase is going to be the action phase, where you can build shrines, build temples, build ziggurats, use special abilities, add armies to the board, attack other players, and basically do anything that's going to burn up your power. After you've gone through the action phase, the next thing is going to be the power phase, where players are going to get power based on however many different buildings they happen to have on the board, depending on what hero quest they manage to complete. And that's another big thing that's different from Cthulhu Wars, because you want to build your hero quest differently, because Cthulhu Wars has the gifts. This game has a hero quest, and they're going to give you extra powers for your faction. But as you're building these, they're going to allow you to start gaining power and victory depending on what order you gain them. So there's kind of a difference in this game where there's always not a perfect pattern on which powers you want to get, because sometimes you may need victory points, sometimes you may have power, and that may have influence on how you're going to gain these abilities. But again, I don't want to jump ahead of myself and just try and give you a rough overview of how the game plays. And after everybody gains power and you have your minimum power so you don't get too far left behind, much like Cthulhu Wars has, after that you're going to get to the council phase. Now the council phase is going to do 2 things, and it's based on the victory point track. Now this game is played to 40 victory points, but as soon as 10 victory points happens, the spike is going to be destroyed, meaning you're going to have one less way to get to the sky, and players can't get to the center map through there anymore because it's been destroyed, and it lets you know and remind you you're going to get the Chaos Rift. Now the Chaos Rift is going to have a big influence on the game, especially if the Chaos player happens to be in the game, and all the players must semi-work together to close the Chaos Rift, because the longer the Chaos Rift is open, the bigger the drain they're going to have all on their resources, and the more powerful Chaos is going to get. Now when you play the game without Chaos, I assume it's going to be a little bit different, but again, I haven't looked into the other factions. I only have the print and play here. But just from my investigations, it does seem like different factions are going to play differently. But in the basic set, Chaos does very much thrive on the Chaos Rift being open as long as possible, and the other players are going to get a week as long as this Chaos Rift is open, so they're going to work together and close it as quickly and as efficiently as possible, which means every single player needs to start making sacrifices. The players who make the worst sacrifice, I guess the least sacrifice, are going to get additional penalties, and the players who make the greatest sacrifice are going to help close the Chaos Rift as quickly as possible. But again, if they don't work together and they don't make personal sacrifices to get the Chaos Rift closed, it's going to continue to stay open and continue to be a drain for all the players, all their resources, and all their armies, as they're going to slowly get sucked into the Chaos Rift. Once the Chaos Rift is destroyed, it's going to be removed from the game, and now we have an additional way to enter hell beside this side of the map. And again, this is going to happen once the players manage to destroy the Chaos Rift. And of course, the other thing that's going to be based on the scoring is at, like I said, at 10 points, the Chaos Rift appears. But once we get to 20 points, we're going to have the Great Console phase. And this is going to be very interesting, and this is where players are going to do various things where they're going to have to start doing things that's going to allow them to get victory points, but they're also going to give victory points to other players based on their decisions. So again, we're going to go back into the major diplomacy of the game. This game starts feeling much more diplomatic once we get to the 20 victory point marker, and it's going to play that way until we get to 40 victory points, and a final winner is decided. Again, before we close up, I just want to apologize. I know I don't have the fancy green screen going on behind me or anything like that, but I did have to splice this into the full gameplay video. I hope I've covered everything pretty quickly. I know I did a really good job in the original video, and I'm going off the top of my head. And oh, one other thing I did forget to cover, and I do definitely want to cover this, and this is one important difference between this game and Cthulhu Wars that may be confusing to some players, so I want to make sure I do cover it. And I can't believe I actually forgot it. If you look down the map, you're not going to see any listed places where each one of these factions start. That's because in this game, none of the factions have a specific location where they have to start the game. You're going to start the game in any one of these regions you want. You're going to lay down your shrines, and of course there's a little bit of difference because every one of these factions is asymmetric, and they all have a slightly different way to play and different rules to them, but basically you're going to lay down a shrine anywhere you want on the map, and once that shrine is built, you can start building units at that location. And you can build shrines anywhere you want. You don't have to have one of your units in a location to build a shrine there. So that's, again, a big difference from Cthulhu Wars, and something that's actually one of the reasons why I do like this game a little bit better than Cthulhu Wars. But I want to jump ahead of myself. I want to get directly into the video. So I'm going to go ahead and splice this in. I apologize for the abrupt splice. That's probably going to happen here. I'm going to do my best to get in here nice and cleanly. And again, I apologize for lack of the green screen. I hope the lighting is good here. I just want to get this interjection put in here really quick. But let's go ahead and bring everything down to the table and show you the Gods War. At the start of the game, every single faction is going to set up their board or set the gameplay space based on whatever their faction board tells them to do. Now again, this is an asymmetrical game, so every one of the factions is going to set up just a little bit differently. It's going to be listed on every single one of the faction boards. Now the Chaos player starts with 6 power at the very start of the game, but they start with nothing on the board. The next player is going to be the Storm player. They also start with 6 power, but they also start with a Shrine and Kylarella. And I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, and if you guys want to laugh at my ability to pronounce things, go ahead and check out my Firefly video. That's always a good laugh or two at least. But Kylarella is where the Storm player starts with 1 shrine already in play. The Darkness player gets to start with 6 power. They don't start with any shrines in play, but they start with 4 trolls in the outer hell. And finally, the Sky player starts with 6 power. Their greater god is actually starting the game and in play, and the interesting thing about their greater god is he can never die in the game, which means he can never give any one of the factions a benefit of killing a greater god. So for example, this faction right here says kill an enemy god in battle. Well, a Storm attacks the Sky's sun god, they don't get the benefit of completing their hero quest because the sun god never ever dies. If at any point he is supposed to die or he takes a fatal blow, he immediately goes back to the inner hell. Again, not given any rewards, not given anything, so it can be kind of a waste of time killing him. But don't ever ignore the sun god because he will become a thorn in your side, and it's part of his strategy. But it's very important to understand that killing the sun god is pretty pointless unless you're just trying to remove him and send him back to hell. Anyways, the sun god does start in play, and the sky player does start with 6 power, and they start with 1 shrine on the spike, which is something you don't want to rely on because the spike is something that we know will definitely be destroyed, usually by the end of the second turn, but almost always by the third turn. Our mascot Fluffy is going to be the turn player decider, and this is going to face depending on which turn or which order the play order is going to go. So if we want play order to go this way, we're going to have him face this way. If we want play order to go this way, we're going to face him this way. And as always, the Sky player is the one who always starts with their first player marker. And don't forget, like I said in the introduction, I have these miniatures set up only for the Storm player only. And again, I just want to give you an idea of what the game will look like with real miniatures in play, because the game does come with real miniatures instead of these cardboard stand-ups. Again, they're not the miniatures that come with the game, but they are the proper color, and they're about the right size. So we do have the Storm King, we have the Champion, we have the Storm Brothers and their sister Dot, pardon the reference, and we have our 4 Barbarians there. So that's going to be for the Storm player. That is the full setup of the game. We shuffled our runes, the game is ready to go. We got to start the game, and the first player to go is going to be the Sky player. Needs to figure out what kind of decisions, what kind of strategy they want to make, and the first part of the strategy is they need to figure out if they want Chaos to go next, or if they want Darkness to be the next player in player order. We're going to go ahead and decide that we're going to make Darkness the next player in the player order. May be the best decision, may not be the best decision, because this is definitely one of those games where going later in the turn can actually help you, because you get to see what everybody else does and you get to react to their other actions. But also, having thought about that, the Sky player does want to watch exactly what Darkness is going to do, because remember, Darkness has those trolls, Darkness has strategies, and Darkness usually starts the second turn as a very dark assassin heading out into the world and striking using their special abilities. At the beginning of the game, the most important thing you need to do is you need to start establishing your power base, and by your power base along the board, and then also means your power base by gaining power every single turn. Now remember, during the power phase, you're going to get 2 power for every different building you have in play, which means you need to have a ziggurat, a shrine, and a temple in play to get 6 power. But if you have all 6 of your shrines in play, it's only going to give you 2 power, so you must build variety, otherwise you're going to doom yourself in the power phase. And at least, well, maybe not doom yourself, but you're definitely going to leave yourself behind the other players. So the first thing the Sky player needs to decide is they need to figure out what strategy they're going to go for, and they need to figure out exactly where they want to start building things. Now the Sky player does have some very, very powerful gifts that are very nice that allow them to do things, and that may affect their strategy, and we're going to go start thinking about that when we start building our strategy. So the very first thing we are going to do is we're going to spend 1 power, and we're going to build a shrine out in the Sky Dome. That is the end of the Sky player's turn. It's now over to the Darkness player. Now the Darkness player has a couple of really good strategies that they can play, and that's one of the big things about the Darkness player is they should pick one of, basically I think there's about 3 really good strategies for the Darkness player that they can pick at the start of the game. Again, that's going to be based on what the other players are doing and watching what they're doing and figuring out what you want to do on the second turn. Now the cool thing about the Darkness player is they can leave hell anytime they want. They don't need permission, they don't need to pay victory points or do any special things to leave hell. Starting with the second turn, it's a special ability of the faction. We can enter and leave it anytime we want. So what we're thinking what we're going to do is we're going to abuse 2 special abilities of the Darkness player. One is the ability that once we're in hell, we can leave it and go to anywhere on the board we want. We don't have to exit the Gate of Dawn. And also, that's going to give us some ability to move around, but we also want to get the Mistress in play because she's a guaranteed instant kill in any battle we happen to fight. And that's going to work on our big hero quest where we need to kill one of either a building or unit from every single faction in play. As soon as we do that, we're going to actually complete 2 hero quests. That's going to give us a lot of power. That's going to give us the ability to start being really mean to the other players if we pick the right hero quest rewards. Because we can get to the point where if we win any battles, we can route anybody to anywhere in the world, including a hell, which means we can start locking down our opponents of the units and start sending them away, causing a lot of problems for opponents. So using that thought process, our strategy is we're going to do the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to build a shrine right here at the entrance to hell, which is going to give us some mobility and the ability to move from here over there and instantly move anywhere on the map we want. Again, that's going to give us mobility, give us lots of things to do, and give us some options on what we can do going to the next turn and also abusing our powers, because we know at the beginning of the second turn, we definitely want to strike fast, strike hard, and send all of our units out on the board and start finishing those hero quests. Now, the Storm player has a couple different options, and the Storm faction is very interesting because for them to start getting the hero quest down, they need to start attacking the other players, and they're also kind of relying on what the other players are doing. So they need the other players to start getting some runes so they can get one of the hero quests done. They need to start attacking the other players so they get some of the hero quests done. And that's actually half of all their hero quests right there. Those are 3 hero quests that cannot be completed without the other players doing things. So we need to start off to be a little bit more conservative so we can position ourselves as efficiently as possible so we can complete our hero quests. Because looking at the board right now, there is no way we can complete 3 of our hero quests, and that's kind of limiting our options. So we're going to kind of go over more of a defensive play. We start with a shrine in play. So the only thing we're going to do is we're going to spend 1 power, and we're simply going to bring a barbarian into play to Kylarella, where we have our current shrine. That's the end of the Storm player's turn. We now get to go over to the Chaos player, and the Chaos player has 2 really good, strong openings. They're not their only openings, they're not their best openings, but there's 2 very strong openings that you can consider based on the play state and exactly what you want to do following in the next rounds. Now, the Chaos player has a couple different options of what they can do, and this can be based on the abilities and powers of their faction. See, the way the Chaos works is they have a permanent ability that anytime they build one of their nests, they're not going to build shrines or temples or ziggurats at all. They can basically build nests, or if they get a certain hero quest finished and pick the correct hero quest, they can embed their nests, which makes them more powerful and allows them to do extra things like gain extra power. But they have a permanent power that's always in play. If they build a nest in the same area where another player has built a shrine, temple, or ziggurat, they're going to gain extra power for doing that. So they basically want to be a pest and a leech and kind of leeching on the other players. And that's be part of the strategy that they want to decide what they want to do. But there's also a secondary strategy that we have where we can either go all nests on the first turn, build 6 nests in the same areas that the other players are building their nests, the other players are building their shrines and temples, because we know the other players are going to start building buildings because they're going to need them for power anyways. So we can basically just be a parasite, not really do anything on the first round, just build where the other players build, and go through all 6 of our power that way. The other option we can do is we can be a semi-parasite, build only a couple nests, bring out one of our greater gods, and specifically we can bring out the Lady of Disease, and she has some special powers to make us even more of a thorn of our opponent's side, and they'll actually do a secondary thing. That'll allow us to complete one of our hero quests, and that hero quest can put us down a path of certain strategies. We can use that first hero quest to do embed, which is allow us to turn all our nests into embedded nests, which are very hard to knock out and give us some extra benefits and some extra power. Or what we can do is we can ignore that and start working towards the combination of using Blood Sacrifice and Oblivion. Want to make sure I say the names right. But using both those together, combined with the Lady of Disease, allows us to become a real thorn on the other player's sides. So those are some things that we can decide on doing and some strategies we can think about doing. But what we're going to decide to do is we think that we're going to go for the Lady of Disease plus the 4 shrine strategy. So we need to look at the 4 nest strategy. So we need to look where the other players have built all their shrines and their temples when that happens and start figuring out exactly what we want to do. And again, we're a parasite. We want to feed off of them, become more powerful from feeding off of them, but we also want to sow chaos because we are the Chaos faction. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build a nest, which is going to cost us a single power. So we're going to go down to 5. Now, our nests are pretty disposable. As a matter of fact, our second greater god, as soon as he comes out, we're going to start blowing up our nest to start summoning tons of these brews all over the board, which is going to cost us 2 power to get 6 units into play very quickly, which is going to be very much a thorn in the side of the other players. So, having thought about that, we could put it on the spike, knowing that we're going to shatter it anyways. We don't have to worry about the spike falling apart on us anyways. So it's not really a concern of ours, but that's also going to limit our mobility. So we could go over here next to hell, but we need to be careful about that because if darkness gets their gifts, they're going to make us flee into hell where we can't escape from without permission or until we get to the the great, I forgot the term, the great console phase. But that's going to limit our options at that point. Also, or the final thing is we can go and be a parasite off of the Sky Player right now, which is going to give us some extra options of movement because we can go from the Sky Dome to either side of the map, and we can even drop down on the spike if we want to. So having said all that, the short version of what we're going to do is we're going to build one of our nests. We're going to build in the Sky Dome right next to the shrine, and that's going to ensure that we're going to get some extra power. We're going to be a parasite. We're going to feed off the other players, and it's going to be a really good opening move, at least for the Chaos player. That's it for every single player going with our first usement of power. Now we get to start with the Sky player, who gets to start the second part of the action phase. Oh, well, we're still in the first action phase, but they get to start over with their options, and we're going to continue going around and a round robin like this until everybody has spent all of their power. The Sky player, for their turn, they're simply going to spend 2 power going down from 5 all the way down to 3, and they're going to build their first temple. Now the cost for a temple is always 2 power for the Sky player, plus they must destroy one of their shrines, or they must replace one of their shrines. So we're simply going to turn this shrine into a temple, and again, this guarantees that they're going to get a little more power during the power phase. And now, why do we build our temple where the Chaos Nest is? Well, because we know if we build our temple here on the spike, we know the spike eventually is going to be destroyed, which is basically going to be pretty much a waste of power, at least building the temple this early. So we're not going to bother doing that. That's going to be the end of the Sky player's turn. It's now back to the Darkness player, who is simply going to spend 1 power, and they're going to build a shrine. Now, we're going to build a shrine over in the hill area right here with our trolls. And one thing we need to make sure we figure out for our strategy-wise, as the Darkness players, do we want to put all of our eggs in one basket and build up that shrine? Or do we want to build up this shrine out here? And that's something we need to decide if we want to do. And we'll get to that in later rounds, but it's something we definitely need to decide. But that is going to be the end of the Darkness player's turn. We now get to go back to the Storm player. The Storm player is simply going to spend 2 power. They're going to upgrade this shrine to a temple because they know they can defend it. They have a barbarian there to at least protect it a little bit. Plus, their temple has a special, really nice ability that allows you to add 1 to your route rolls. And not only that, we can always move 2 spaces from a temple. So we now have added to the ability for our barbarians to move because of only moving, instead of only moving 1 space, when we spend a power, we get to move 2 spaces thanks to the special power of our temple. Which is a nice thing about the Storm player. They can cross the map very, very well if they spread out their temples and their ziggurats very, very well. The Chaos player, for their turn, they're simply going to spend 1 power and they're going to build a nest. Now they're going to build a nest on the spike, which you may think, why would you do that since we know the spike is going to be destroyed? Well, the reason why we're going to do that is because the eventual plan is to build a Lady of Disease here. Then we're going to summon our second greater god, which is the Magna Mater. Then we're simply probably going to blow that nest up, which is going to give us a huge army to spread out all over the map in any direction we like, which is going to be really nice. At least that's our long-term strategy. So that's the end of the Chaos player's turn. We now get to go back to the Sky player, who is simply going to spend 1 power. They're going to summon an archer right here on the spike, and they're finished. We now get to go over to the Darkness player. The Darkness player, for their turn, they're going to spend 2 power, dropping them down to 2, and they are going to bring out the Mistress. And they're going to summon her in hell. Now, we could have started her right here, but remember, we're going to take advantage of our special power. Allows us to go anywhere on the world we want once we're in the lower nether regions there. So it's going to be a good benefit, and we can send all 5 of these units out versus spreading them out. And remember, we want to use her. We want to eventually get her special abilities. Allows us to do instant kills so we can fulfill this hero quest. That's the end of the Darkness player's turn. We now get to go back to the Storm player. Storm is simply going to spend 1 power. They're going to build a shrine. Now remember, the Storm player's ability is the ability to move across the map very, very efficiently and very well as long as they get temples and ziggurats built. So what we're thinking is we build kind of spread out. We can abuse the ability to move this island around if we like. We can abuse the ability of our temples so we know that we cross a lot of land. And remember, it requires us for the Storm player to start getting aggressive and start attacking the other players. So we need to figure out exactly what we want to do. And again, this does put us fairly close to coming over here to the spike and attacking. So we probably could have done the Sea of Fog, spent a power to go over there and move over there and attack, but we don't have any units to do that with yet. So it wouldn't be a great decision. So we're thinking that it's a good idea to build the shrine right here. And that's going to be the end of the Storm player's turn. It's now Chaos' turn. They're going to go ahead and spend 2 power, which is going to allow them to bring the Lady of Disease into play. She's going to be summoned right here. Remember, we have to summon our units at locations where we have buildings. That's going to cost us 2 power. But we have now completed one of our hero quests, and now we have the options of the decisions we get to do, like I discussed earlier. We go the embed route, or we work towards the Oblivion and the Blood Sacrifice route. Well, we know that we're probably going to get our other Greater God out the next round, and we're pretty sure there's going to be some battles next round also. So I'm thinking that it's going to be the embed route. It's going to be the better decision. That's going to give us some more options later on. And basically at this point, this means we can spend 2 power, flip any nest over into an embedded nest, which gives us more power, and they're much harder to destroy. So that's going to be the end of it for the Chaos player. We now get to go back to the Sky player. The Sky player, for their turn, they're simply going to spend 1 power, and they're going to get the heck out of the way of the Lady of Disease, because she's preventing us from attacking anyways, which means we can't take out this nest, which kind of makes our life a little more difficult. So we're simply going to use that 1 power, and we're going to do a movement. We're going to activate from the spike, and we're going to go all the way up to our temple in an effort to protect our temple from anything bad happening to us. And we also have an ulterior motive here. That's going to be on the Sky player. We now get to go back to the Darkness player, who has 2 power left over. They're simply going to spend that 2 power. They're going to upgrade this shrine all the way to a temple, and that's the end of their turn. That's all their power, and we're pretty much done with the Darkness player. Next up is Storm, thinking about capitalizing on their ability for mobility, their ability to get around the map, and also just thinking about trying to do things that start getting their hero quest done. They're simply going to spend 2 power, and they're going to summon their champion into play. Their champion is going to into play at their temple. Now remember, we have the extra ability of movement. We can get off the temple and move 2 spaces. So we do have an efficient little army started there. That's going to be it for the Storm player. We're now going to go to the Chaos player, who's simply going to spend 1 power. They're going to summon a nest, and they're going to summon that nest right here where this Darkness temple is at, because we know it's going to be a good place to start causing a lot of problems for all the other players. Plus, it's going to give us some power because we're building where another building is from another player faction. The Sky player, for their turn, they have 1 power left over, and things have luckily worked out in their favor. They're simply going to spend the 1 power. They are going to initiate a battle. They're going to destroy this nest, which hopefully Chaos wasn't really expecting. It doesn't look like Chaos was expecting it. But now that we've destroyed a building, we've managed to complete one of our hero quests. One of our hero quest requirements was for us to conquer or destroy a shrine or a chaos nest in a battle. We've managed to defeat that because we initiated a battle. There's no defenders there to protect the location. So we completed that, and we're going to go ahead and pick our very first Sky gift. We're going to pick the Call of Justice, which allows us to become a jerk really quick to the other players and guarantee that we're either going to be a thorn in their side, or they're going to let our sun god out of the nether regions and start rampaging across the overworld. The Darkness player and the Storm player no longer have any power, so there's nothing they can do. Their turns are going to be bypassed, because remember, if you have 0 power, there's nothing you do on your turn. Finally, we're going to go to Chaos. They're simply going to spend 1 power. They're going to bring that nest back into play that they lost, and they could put it here, or they could put it over here on the temple. It'd be pretty silly to put it over here on the temple, because we know that's going to allow them to destroy it pretty darn quickly. So we're going to put it over here next to the shrine, knowing that there's no way that we're going to lose it anytime soon. And that's going to be it. That's going to be the end of the action phase for all of our players. We now get to move to the power phase, or we're going to do this all in turn order. Normally the power phase you can do actually by everybody doing it all at one time. But since we're showing this and want you to understand exactly how this works, we're going to do this one team or one faction at a time. So to go ahead and figure out the power for each one of our factions, again, I'm going to do this one at a time to help you understand exactly how the power works. The very first thing we do before we do any of the power factions or any of the power for any of our factions, we need to have the Glorantha phase. Now the Glorantha phase is going to give power to every one of our factions. If they're not chaos, it's basically the world trying to help all these gods overcome the evil of chaos, even while they're bickering among themselves and fighting among themselves. So the way this is going to work is every single faction is going to obtain 1 single point of power. And again, this is just going to be given just because the world likes them a lot better than they like chaos, who they don't like at all. Next thing we need to do is every single faction is going to gain power based on their building variety, any hero quests they manage to complete by having these shards filled in, and also depending on any powers that may have happened to gain, such as, for example, if I would have gained solar energy, the sun god will produce extra power as long as he's on the surface world and as long as I've had this hero quest completed. Now in this case, that's not the case, but that's just to show you exactly how that's going to work. So let's go ahead and start with the sky player. We're going to see that we have two different kinds of buildings on the board right now. We have a shrine and we have a temple. So we're going to get 2 power for every different kind of building we had. Now if we had 4 shrines on the board and no temples and no ziggurats, we'd simply only gain 2 power. So we do want to build a variety, not only for the benefits those buildings get, because as the buildings get more powerful, they're able to defend themselves better, but also because they're going to give us more power. But the downside to that is when we come to the victory point phase, you gain victory points for your total buildings. Variety doesn't really matter, so you want more buildings for victory points, more variety for power. So point being, we're going to gain 2 for a shrine, 2 for our temple. That's going to take us from 1 all the way up to 5 power, plus we managed to complete 1 hero quest. Every time you complete 1 hero quest in an individual shard, and there's 3 shards, and it doesn't look like it in these print and play copies. When the final results come out, you're going to see how it looks a lot better. But basically, there's a top shard, a middle shard, and a bottom shard. If you complete one of the shards, you're going to gain a victory point for every completed shard, and for every half completed shard, you're going to gain a victory point. So since we've half completed a single shard, that's going to give us 1 more point of power, and that's going to bring us up to 6 power for the sky player. Next up, we have the darkness player. Now the darkness player is going to be a lot like the sky player, where you have a temple and we also have a shrine, so that's going to be 4 victory points. That's going to move us all the way up to 5 total power. Unfortunately, the darkness player hasn't completed any of their hero quests, so they're not going to get any extra power, so they're going to be trailing behind the sky player by 1 power. Not too terrible, but again, not too great. Next up, we're going to have the storm player. Now the storm player has a shrine and a temple in play. That is going to be worth 4 total power, bringing them to a total of 5. They have not completed any of their hero quests yet. Now normally they do have a very nice power that if anybody has any more victory points than them, they're going to gain power for every nation that has more victory points than them. Unfortunately, since we're all at 0, we're not going to get that benefit yet, so we're going to skip that. That's going to be it for the storm player. Now we got to figure out the power for the chaos player. Now the chaos player only has 1 building type. Embedded nests do count as regular nests when we figure out our building type. So we get 2 power for the building type. So we're going to go from 0 all the way up to 2 power there. We managed to complete 1 part of a fragment. That's going to give us 1 more point of power. We now happen to be up to a total of 3 power now. And then finally, our special power of our factions, we're going to gain 1 point of power for every nest that shares the same space with another opponent's building. So that's going to be a total of 3 power, bringing us up to 6 power. Now we're done with the power phase. We need to get to move over to the council phase, where not too much is going to happen because our scores haven't hit the point where the rift or the spike is shattered. And we definitely don't have the great compromise going on yet, but we do need to figure out if there's going to be any victory points gained, and there will be some victory points gained, and then we need to figure out who's going to be the new first player. Before we start the council phase, though, we do need to make sure that there's nobody lagging too far behind in power. And there's a nice benefit to the game that if any player is lagging too far behind in power, they're going to get boosted up just a little bit. That's not the case here, so we can go ahead and ignore that and start the council phase. Now, the first part of the council phase is figuring out what the turn order is going to be for the next round. And basically the way that's going to work is whichever player currently has the most power, ignoring chaos, because chaos can never be the first player in the game. Whoever has the most power is going to be the new starting player. Now, if there's ever a tie, then what we're going to do is we're going to figure out who the starting player is going to be by a tiebreaker, but we don't have that in this instance because it's basically going to be between Sky, Dark, and Storm, who the new first player is, and since Sky still has the most power, they're going to remain the first player. Now they need to figure out which way they want the player order to go. They want it to go clockwise or counterclockwise. Well, the Sky player doesn't like what Chaos is doing, and they don't want Chaos to start getting too much time to think and too much time to watch what the other players are doing, because they know basically at this point Chaos needs to start building some of these nests to start gaining power, because they didn't get as much power as they could, because Chaos really can build up power very quickly if you're not careful, and you don't stop the Chaos player. So we're going to turn it, and we're going to make it so now going to be a clockwise, and Fluffy now says we're going to move in a clockwise pattern. Now that we've done that, we need to figure out how many victory points every single player is going to get, and we're all going to get a single victory point for every single building we have in play, not building type, for every single building we have in play, and for every completed shard we have. Now, nobody has any completed shards. 2 players have half completed shards, but nobody's completed a complete shard. So basically, everybody's going to get a victory point for every building they have in play. So let's do this very, very quickly for the Sky player. They have 2 buildings in play. They have a temple and a shrine. So they're simply going to gain 2 victory points up on the track. They're going to go from 0 to 2 victory points. Next up, we have Darkness. They have a temple and they have a shrine. They're simply going to gain 2 victory points. They don't have any special abilities to give them any extra victory points at all. Next up, we have the Storm player. They have a temple and a shrine. That's going to be 2 victory points. And then finally, the Chaos player, they have 3 nests in play. That's going to move them up to 3 victory points. Now remember, as soon as we hit 10 victory points, the spike is going to shatter. So players need to make that part of their strategy. But that's the end of the victory points for all of our players. We're pretty much done with that. We can go ahead and look at the turn structure list that comes with the game. And we see that after we earn our victory points for that, we're going to move to the spike shattering if that was the case. And then we move to the great compromise if that was the case. But it's not the case here. So we're basically done. We can basically start round 2 of the game. Before we move to round 2, though, I almost forgot, this is where the Sky player gets to be a jerk to other players. Now, the Sky player has their Call to Justice ability, which is going to activate now during the council phase. And basically what this allows them to do is they can select any other unit from any empire, and they're going to move that unit to the Sun God's area. Now, remember, the Sun God cannot escape the Nether regions until they have another player give them permission, or until the spike has been destroyed and the Chaos Rift has been closed. Well, Sky doesn't like that. Sky likes to be a jerk, and Sky's going to go ahead and be a jerk. And now they have 2 options they can do here. They can pull the Lady of Disease, pull her all the way into hell, knowing that the Lady of Disease can get out pretty easily since she has 0 power. Basically, anybody or anything can let her out. Even her own brews can let her out because they have 1 power, and she's really easy to let out. Or what Sky can do is they can be a jerk to the Storm player because the champion for the Storm player has 2 power. And they can let them out of hell, especially if the Sun God decides to strong arm them. So what's going to happen is the Sun God's going to be a bit of a jerk. They're going to strong arm. They're going to pull the champion all the way into hell. And then the Storm player is going to get really annoyed and really upset. And now we have some more blood drawn, and we have a little bit of anger going on both sides because the Sun God has just ruined Storm's strategy. So the Sky player gets to start the next round, and now the Sky player actually has lots of options available to them. They have a very angry Storm player, but they do have a way to work out a plan with them. Basically, at this point, the Sky player can look over the Storm player and say, look, if you let me out, I'll give you a rune, and not only that, you're going to have a nice chance to go against darkness. Now remember, if you attack, and if you start killing some of the immortals, which they have plenty of immortals over there for you to bite on, you're going to start gaining some of your hero quests. So I've actually managed to help you a little bit. Yeah, I've been a little bit of a thorn in your side, but I've also managed to help you. So let's work out a deal. You let me out, I'll give you a rune, and I promise not to attack you at all this entire round. So these 2 players decide if they want to make a deal or not. And you know what? Storm's a little bit annoyed, but they do see the benefits of what's happened. It's not a total loss for them. So they say, fine, if I get the rune, I will let you out. So simply what happens, Sky plays 1 power, and the Sun God has exited, and he now goes to the gates of dawn. Now, a couple of things gets to happen at this point. First of all, he's completed one of his hero quests, and now he can give it a rune to the Storm player. So the Storm player is simply going to draw a rune, and they're going to gain the rune that calls Rain. It says, select another player. Each of you gains 2 power. Now, we never show these to the other players. I'm just showing you exactly what rune which we managed to gain. I'm going to place it down here, over here near the Storm player. I'm going to leave it face up. Now again, remember, we never show the runes to the other players until we're ready to use them. I'm just leaving it face up so you can see it. But now the Sun God has completed another one of their hero quests. They have a couple different options of what they can do here, depending on what strategy they want to take in the rest of the game. First player order is very important. Attacking the other players is very important, so we need to decide exactly what we want to do. We can take the Sky Gift Solar Energy, which is going to give us more power. The more power we have, the more options we have, and also means we're going to lock down the player order if we like. So that's one option we have right there. The other option we have is we have the Sun Spiral, which we can turn any mortal and lesser units anywhere on the board into phoenixes. Now, we've already promised not to be aggressive towards Storm, and we don't want to break any of our promises. Not that we don't have the option to do that, but we really don't want to do it, at least not yet. So it's not really an option we want to do right now. Plus, we have a couple other abilities and different options we can do, but we want to pick an ability that we're going to keep because the ability of the Sun God is their ability to start replacing their bottom 2 hero quests, and as part of the strategy. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to take the Solar Energy Gift. That's going to give us extra power every single round, or the potential for extra runes. That's going to be it for the Sky player. We now get to go over to the Chaos player, who needs to decide if they want to save their power or ensure they have power in later turns, because we know the spike is going to be breaking either at the end of this round or possibly the next round, depending on how the buildings get built. Now, before I move to the Chaos players and take their turn, I want to make sure I emphasize that since the Sun God did move, and the Sun God does have a special power, allows all my units to move whenever he moves, I could have moved my archer, but I didn't want to, so I'm not forgetting. I just want to let you know that it's not an option I'm going to take this time because I'm liking where the archer's at. Especially if I get the ability, it allows me to start raining down all kinds of damage from the heavens down upon the planet here, thanks to a special power that I can get as a sun god. So, we're going to move over to the Chaos player who needs to figure out exactly what they want to do. Now, unfortunately, we made it so the Chaos player needs to start building in ways that are maybe less efficient, or they need to figure out exactly what they want to do on their turn, but again, they need to start making some decisions very, very quickly. We're simply going to decide that since we're not getting a lot of options right now, we're simply going to build our second greater god, which is going to allow us to complete a second hero quest. He does cost 4 power. We're going to go from 6 all the way down to 4 power, and we need to bring him into play anywhere we currently have a nest. And actually, I think I'm going to take that back. I have a better idea. We're going to stay at 6 power. We're simply going to spend 1 power, and we're going to bring another nest into play. We're going to take this nest, and we are going to build it in a way that's going to give us a lot of options and keep a lot of options for movement. Now, this probably isn't the best idea, but I'm going to push my luck, hedge my bets, and try to anticipate what the other players are going to do. And I'm going to build that nest right here, which is going to give us lots of options and lots of extra movement opportunities, especially when the spike disappears. So that's our cost of 1 power. We now get to go to the Storm player, who we know what they're going to do. They're going to spend 1 power. They're going to move their champion over here to make sure they cause a lot of chaos and destruction for the Darkness player. We'll bypass all the way over to the Darkness player. They're going to spend 2 power going from 5 all the way down to 3 to summon a shade. And now that we're done with that, we get to go all the way back to the Sky player. The Sky player for their turn, they're going to go ahead and they're going to spend 3 power, bringing them all the way down to 2 power, and they're going to turn their temple into the ziggurat. Now this is going to do a couple different things for them. It's going to start locking in whatever strategy we're going to decide we're going to do in the long term here. But the first thing it's going to do is it's going to allow us to complete another one of our hero quests. And we're going to take the hero quest power that allows us to start raining heck down from the skies onto any region that happens to be adjoining it, which means we can start attacking other areas that are causing problems for us without moving our archers around. And we're going to take the Shanae's battle. I probably pronounced that incorrectly. But we're going to take it for place on a ziggurat. And that does guarantee that we're going to start raking in some extra victory points. And we still have some power left over. Now we get to move back to the Chaos player. The Chaos player, on their turn, they need to figure out exactly what they want to do, and they have a couple different options, and we have some couple decisions that we can do. We could build a nest right here, but then we know that the Sky player, since they still have power left over, they're probably just going to destroy it, and that's just going to be basically be a waste of power for both of us, which is the main reason why we built this nest down here earlier instead of the other decision we were about to do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start making everybody realize that we can be a thorn and a pain in everybody's side, and we're going to spend 4 power, and we're going to summon the Magnamator. He's going to come in this location right here, and now we've managed to complete our secondary hero quest. And then we're simply going to follow that up by completing the hero quest for the blood sacrifice. Now that we have the blood sacrifice in play, all the players need to watch where our greater gods are, because in any area they happen to be in, they're going to demand a sacrifice, whether that's a unit or a building. And again, now that we're starting to get our more expensive buildings out, that can be very damaging for all of our players. That's it for the Chaos player. They still have 1 power left in case they want to do anything, and they definitely still want to do something. Now we get to go to the Storm player, who's going to go all or nothing and hope that they manage to get at least 1 kill and possibly, hopefully, complete a hero quest. So the Storm player is basically hoping for a Hail Mary play. We have 2 dice to roll for attack, and we got a 6 and we got a 5, so we definitely got a kill and we got a rout. Attacker rolls first, and then in Defender we have 4 Trolls, which is going to be 4 dice. We have Mistress, which is 1 die. Then we have a Shade, which is 1 die, for a total of 6 dice total. So we're simply going to roll 6 dice and figure out exactly what kind of battle results we're going to get. And looks like everything just worked out kind of in the Storm player's favor. They basically were hoping that they would die in the process so they'd be free to go back up and be resummoned. Of course, that actually wouldn't have happened because Darkness would have kept them as a trophy to work towards the hero quest. So this actually works out totally in their benefit. So the first thing we need to decide first is the Sky player has completed 1 kill versus the Darkness player. So Darkness needs to decide which one of the units has died. We're going to pick a Troll. The Troll is simply going to be die and be removed from the board. And we've now managed to kill an enemy mortal in battle, so we need to make sure we grab our hero quest in just a moment when this battle is completed. And then we're also going to get 1 rout result. So we don't have any more or any kills to work on for the Darkness player, so we immediately move to the routing part of the combat. So we have 1 rout to resolve. Darkness decides that they're going to let a Troll be routed, and then Sky is going to decide that they're going to route the Troll over here. That's an option they have. They could technically route him over here out of the hell, because darkness player is not confined to hell, and that's actually an option for us, and that will allow us to have some fodder for the sun god. But again, we're having a semi-impasse versus the sun god. But again, the sun god kind of was a jerk to us. So I'll tell you what, we're actually going to route that troll over to the sun god's area, and see that's going to be a little bit of thorn in his side. Because technically, listening to the letter of our pact, we said if we want to attack each other. We haven't attacked each other, we just made it easier for another player to attack. So now that we're done with that, we need to figure out if we have any routes on our side of our hero. Well, we have two total route results. That's enough to route us. We only have one unit to route, so we're simply going to move to the other location. We can't leave. We don't have the ability to get permission. We're too powerful to be given permission. So that's basically the only place we can route to. That is the end of the battle. We now get to move over to the darkness player. Now, before we go any further, and before darkness takes their turn, the storm player needs to figure out exactly which hero quest they want to have, or hero quest reward they want to take. And they actually have three very good decisions at this point, exactly which hero quest they want to take. The first thing they can do is they can take Insurgency. And what Insurgency will allow them to do is if they win any battles and there's a building of an opponent in that location, they can immediately conquer that location and replace it with a temple. That means, yes, we can upgrade a nest to a temple, we can upgrade an enemy's temple to a temple, or we can upgrade an enemy's shrine to a temple. So that can be very powerful and allow us to concentrate on moving this unit around the world, around the board, and getting our other temples out on the board, which can be very powerful. Give us some victory points, and temples are very easy to defend, at least for us, and give us some extra movement. And remember, movement's very powerful in this game. So that's one option we have right now. The other option we have is we can go ahead and bring out the teleport ability, which is going to cost us 1 or 2 power. It's going to rely on us to get our greater god out into play, but it may allow us to use our greater god to free our champion from the nether regions, or from outer hell, or sorry, from the inner hell, bring him back into play out on the main board so he's not trapped in hell. But he's not really wasted down there, so I don't know if that's such a great decision yet, but it is an option for us to do. The other thing we can do is we can bring out the single combat, which is allow the champion over there in hell to roll his 2 combat dice before the opponent gets to roll any of their dice. And if I can manage to score 2 kills or 2 routes or whatever, those units can be removed from the battle. I don't have to worry about them retaliating. So that could be pretty darn decent, and it's another option we have of something we can do. What I'm thinking we're going to do, though, is we're liking the idea of getting the temples out, because the more temples we have out, the more abilities we have to travel around the board. Because remember, anytime one of our units leaves a region with one of our temples, we can move 2 spaces. And temples are pretty good at defending themselves. They always score an automatic route, so we don't have to worry about leaving them too undefended. So they're actually pretty darn decent for that ability. So we're going to take Insurgency, and that was for killing an enemy mortal in combat, because we did kill the troll. That's it for the storm player. Let's go in and figure out what darkness wants to do. That's 2 options. One, they can vacate hell. They can partially vacate hell as our second option, or they can go ahead and rain holy heck against the storm player for causing them problems. We need to figure out what we want to do. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to work on our hero quest. We're going to leave 1 unit behind to protect our shrine down there, which we're not too worried about it. We're only keeping it for the victory points at this point. And we're going to come out here and go over here and start completing our hero quest. So, starting with the darkness player's turn, the first thing we need to do is we did complete one of our hero quests because we lost a troll. And I already know which hero quest I'm going to take. I'm going to be taking the hunger one because it's the one that's going to fit our strategy the most. It allows the mistress to score an instant kill in all battles, or 2 routes if we like, without needing to roll the dice. Very powerful, very nice, and it's going to help us complete the hero quest we're really interested in here. So we could use it to go take out that champion right there, but we're kind of liking the fact that he's kind of floundering down there, and maybe a little bit of a thorn on our side, but we're not too worried about it. Let's worry about ourselves instead of worrying about what other people can do, because this is a game about gaining advances versus being defensive, at least in the early parts of the game. So we're simply going to take our mistress, we're going to take a shade, and we're going to take a troll, and we're going to fly all the way over here to this region, which is going to cost us 1 point of power for movement. We're going to leave 1 troll behind because he's going to protect that shrine. Hopefully the theory is to make things a little bit more difficult for this champion. He's going to have to actually score a kill or a route to get rid of that shrine. Possible, not totally impossible, but we still stand a chance. Plus it's going to get these 3 guys out here, making things a little bit better for us. We're pretty much knowing that shrine is going to disappear, but we're not too worried about it this time, at least not right now, because we have this nice temple to back up on. And again, we want to worry about our hero quest. All that to say is that's going to cost us 1 power. That's it for the darkness player. We now get to go back to the sky player. The Sky player for their turn, they're simply going to spend 1 power, and they're going to bring another archer into play in the Sky Dome, again helping to protect their ziggurat. That's going to be on their turn. We now get to go back to the Chaos player who has 1 single power left over. Now they have 2 options they can do here. One, they can use the Magnamator to come all the way up here to cause a lot of problems using their blood sacrifice ability, which is our original idea. Or the other option is they can bring 1 more nest into play and they put it over here in Kylarella and give them some extra options because they're pretty sure that the Storm player is going to start moving around a little bit because that's basically what Storm does. They move around and they start battling, at least in the early game. So those are our 2 options that we can do right now. Well, we're deciding that we want to make life difficult for the Sky player, and we want to start abusing all of our special powers. We're going to start getting here pretty darn quickly, so we're simply going to spend 1 power, and we're going to move all the way up to the Sky Dome. That's it for the Chaos player. They're out of power. We now get to go back to the Storm player. The Storm player actually has a couple different options on their turn, but they're liking the idea of making life as difficult as possible for the other players, and plus they know they're going to need some power in the future turns. So completing Hero Quest is a good idea. We see that the Chaos player really can't do anything this turn anymore. We see that Sky is running low on options since they're being threatened on one of their back doors, so we're pretty sure we know what the Sky player is going to do. So the only thing we need to do is worry about Darkness. Well, we're pretty sure that Darkness is going to take out both the Shrine and the Nest, because that's their best options. That's going to work towards our Hero Quest, so we know that building a ziggurat right now is not going to be a waste of power because we don't have to worry about losing it anytime soon. So we're simply going to spend the 3 full power that does cost to build our ziggurat. This temple is going to be replaced with a ziggurat. That's going to complete our Hero Quest, and now we're back on 2 decisions what we want to do. We have the original idea we had, which was a teleport action, which we use to save our champion, or we have the single combat gift, which is going to allow us to win combats and be much more effective with our champion, and that is the one we're going to pick. Not only is it going to give us extra power because we start working on a second shard, it's going to make our champion much more powerful and allow him to start raising hell in hell, pardon the term. So we're done with the Storm player. We now get to go back to Darkness, who is simply going to spend 1 power. Realizing what the Storm player is going to do, they're going to target that shrine first. This shrine is going to become the first casualty over there. And speaking of casualties, I just realized I forgot we've killed the troll, so the Mad God level actually is going to be at level 1 now. I forgot to do that way earlier. We'll fix that right now really quickly. But we do have our first casualty, which is a shrine. Now we just need 1 unit or building from each other player to complete this double hero quest. So now if I take out something from Sky and something from Chaos, and Chaos is going to be very easy for us to do, we're going to complete a double hero quest and allow us to get 2 powers that work very, very well together. That's it for the Darkness player. We're going to go back to Sky. Sky has a couple options. One, they know they're definitely going to lose an archer because of the blood sacrifice. They're not going to lose their ziggurat because that'd be really stupid. But we definitely have 1 power left over, so we have a couple small options. We know we're going to lose this shrine unless we build a unit there, but then we have to worry about it being wasted for the spike. And we know we would like that power, but we know we're going to gain power during the power phase, not except during the council phase, and the blood sacrifice activates during the council phase. So we're not going to lose the power from the shrine, so it's kind of a given sacrifice. So that's a long way of saying we're just going to spend 1 power. We're going to bring an archer over here into the Sky, making sure that our Sky is a little bit protected from the Magnamator, and also helping work in our eventual strategy we want to work on. Sky's done, Chaos is done, Storm is done. We're now back to Darkness. They're simply going to spend their last power. Destroy this nest, getting the second part of their quest they need. That is it for the action phase for all of our players. We're done. Now we get to go to the power phase. So again, the first part of the power phase is the Glorantha phase, which means everybody but Chaos gets 1 single point of power. So everybody's going to gain a single point of power because, again, the rift has not shattered and the Chaos rift, spike hasn't shattered yet. So now we've done that, we need to figure out how much power everybody's going to get for the buildings. Well, Chaos only has 1 type of building, and they do have their buildings out, so that's going to give them 2 points of power, putting them at 3. The Storm player has 1 type of building in the ziggurat, and is that the only type of building they have? They should have a shrine. Thought they had a shrine out. Am I wrong? This would be a lot easier without the print and play. Nope, they don't have a shrine out, so I guess they're only going to get 2 power from the ziggurat, going from 1 to 3 total power, because the only building we have out is a ziggurat, so it's 1 type of building, putting us at 3 power. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out how much power we get for Darkness having buildings. We have a temple, which is 1 type of building. We have a shrine, which is another type of building. That's going to be a total of 4. That's going to move us all the way up to 5 power. And then the Sky player has a shrine, and they have a ziggurat. They don't have any temples in play. That's 2 different kinds of buildings. That's going to be a total of 4 power. That moves them up to 5. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to figure out how many shards they managed to complete for each one of our players. So Chaos has started 2 shards. That's going to go from 2 all the way up to 4 power right there. We're going to come back over to the Storm player. They've gotten 2 shards. That's going to go from 3 to 5 power. The Dark player is part of 1 shard. That's going to put them from 5 to 6. And finally, Sky has completed 1 shard, and they have half another shard. That's still going to be 2 power. That's going to bring them from 5 to 7. Now that we're done with that, we need to look if anybody has any special abilities that's going to give them some extra power. And we definitely do with Chaos and especially with the Sky player, so we're going to add some more power. And then Chaos, for their special ability, their Festering power is going to gain them 2 power, going from 4 to 6. And the Sun God Sky faction is going to gain 2 power from having their solar energy power, because the Sun God is currently on the overworld. That's going to move them from 7 to 9 power, which is really good for the Sky player, because that also not only locks in their first player ability, it's also going to give them enough power to start doing things on their later turns. So it looks like the Sky player is becoming the medium threat, and the Darkness player is becoming the secondary threat, but the Chaos player and the Storm player are definitely not out of the game yet. Before I forget though, the Storm player does get a single power because there is one nation currently in the game with more power than them, so that's going to give them 1 point of power. That's all the power for all of our players. Everybody has to have at least a minimum of 5 power, because everybody has to have half as many as the person who has the most power rounded up. So that means everybody has to have at least 5 power, because Sky currently has 9 power. That's it for the power phase. It's now time to move to the council phase, where we're going to figure out any victory points and the current first player. I'll start with the first player marker. Sky is going to decide that they like the clockwise. They like making life difficult for the Chaos player. They like watching what Chaos is doing, not giving them a lot of time to decide what they want to do. Plus, they also want to see what they're going to do with the sky, or the surface, or the sky dome, and figure out what they want to do with that there. So we're going to leave Fluffy facing counterclock, or facing clockwise. That's it for that. Now it's time to figure out all the victory points for all of our players. So Chaos is going to get 1, 2, 3 victory points. That's going to move from 3 all the way up to 6. This has been a pretty slow. Usually the spike shatters at the end of the second turn, so it's not going to shatter quite yet. The Sky player has 2 buildings in play. That means they're going to gain 2 victory points for buildings, going from 2 all the way up to 4. Storm has 1 building. They're going to gain 1 victory point. Darkness currently has 2 different kinds of buildings in play. They're going to go from 2 all the way up to 4 victory points. And then we need to figure out if anybody gets any victory points for having completed shards. The Sky player has completed 1 shard, so they're going to gain an extra victory point for the completed shard right there. That's it for the victory points. It's now time for council phase special abilities, and we can just take them in player order here, starting with the Sky player. They're going to use their ability for Call to Justice. And the reason why they're going to do this is because they know that Darkness is going to be gunning for them very, very quickly. We don't want our Sun God to die and go all the way back, because that would waste everything we worked so hard on last turn. So we're going to abuse Chaos' special ability, which means that there's no battles that can happen in the same area as a Lato disease. And that's a little bit of a thorn in the side for the Chaos player, but it also helps us quite a bit, ensuring that if the Darkness player wants to attack us, they're going to have to sacrifice a victory point to do so, making them decide if they really want to attack us or not, and being a little bit of a deterrent. And then the next thing we need to decide if we want to do is the Chaos player needs to use their blood sacrifice ability. And the very annoying thing for the Chaos player is this prevented the Chaos player from activating their blood sacrifice ability, because it can't be used in an area where another greater god happens to be, and it can't be used in an area where the ziggurat happens to be. So we managed to be a double thorn in the side just from using 1 special ability. So the Sky player is very, very happy right now. That's it for the council phase. There's no spike being destroyed. There's no great compromise, so we're done with the second round. We now get to start the third round of the game. The Sky player for the very first turn looks over the Storm player and says, hey, you know what? We've been doing a really good job being best of friends, and we're best of buds here, and we just want to be bestest of friends forever and ever and ever here. So how would you like to have some free power? I'll spend 2 power, and I'll give you 2 wonderful bits of power. And Storm sees no reason why this would be a bad decision, so Sky's going to go down from 9 to 7. Sky goes from 9 to 7. Storm goes from 6 to 8 power, and now we managed to complete another one of our hero quests. And this is going to be the Sun Spirit, which allows us to spend 2 power and turn any mortal unit or lesser god into one of our phoenixes for the cost of 2 power. Again, this allows us to be a little more devastating and a little bit more devious, and it gives us a lot more options in the long run. So that's the end of it for the Sky player. We're going clockwise. We now get to go over to the Chaos player. Chaos for their turn, they're simply going to spend 1 power because they're not liking the fact they've been power starved quite a bit in this game so far. And they're going to put their nest down right here in the Sky Dome. That's going to be it for the Sky player. We now get to go back over to the Storm player. Now Storm actually has quite a bit of decisions on their hand right here and a couple different things they need to do. First of all, they know they need to get more shrines on the board because right now they don't have a lot of shrines, which means they're going to start getting power starved very, very quickly. And they know the Ziggurat is pretty much protected very well. And they know their champion is going to be sitting pretty fine down there, at least for a little bit, and they need to make a decision what they want to do. So they know they need to kill an enemy god in a battle to get their hero quest. They know they have the option of the Lady of Disease, which will cost them a victory point to attack her. So that's one option. We can start building up armies and attack her, which would be one thing we can possibly do to complete that hero quest. Next thing we do is we work on shrines to help us that way. Or what we can do is we can abuse our ability that allows us to turn nests and shrines and other things into our temples, which is our final option of what we can do. So I think that's exactly what we're going to work on. So the first thing we're going to do is we're simply going to spend 1 single power. We're going to bring a secondary barbarian into play. That's going to be it for our turn, and now it's back over to the darkness player's turn. For the darkness player, we're simply going to spend 4 power, going down from 6 all the way down to 2 power, and since we do have a temple in play, we're going to bring the Hell Mother out. So she's going to spawn down there. Now, we could have spawned her at that temple if we wanted to, but we really didn't want to because we're liking the ability to strike from anywhere we like. And now we've managed to complete another one of our hero quests, which is to summon the Hell Mother Kyogre Lo, or however the heck you pronounce her name. So we managed to complete a hero quest, but we've also managed to complete 2 hero quests at the same time. Because not only did we summon her, but we happen to have 1 minion, 1 hero, and 1 lesser god and a greater god in play. You can see that we do have a hero, a minion, a lesser god, and a greater god in play. So we've now managed to complete 2 hero quests at the exact same time. So now we have a couple different options and strategies we can do by adding hero quests onto the board. The first option we can do is we can do the combination of the black market and the spectral form. Spectral form will allow our shades to take 2 hits for us, which means we can keep our mistress alive longer as long as she's hanging around with shades. Or the other option we can do is we can go for the psycho pomp and the fear, which allows us to start racking up victory points and controlling where people go every time they happen to be routed. And I think that's what we want to do because we know we're going to start heading for battles very soon anyways. So we're going to take the Psychopomp, which says each time a group of enemies enter or units enters hell, whether via move or route or other means, I'm going to get either 1 power or 1 victory point decided by the player who happens to be entering. And the other thing is fear, which is post-battle. It says when you route enemy units, I get to decide where they get to go. And that means I can send them all the way to hell, which means these 2 powers are going to feed off of each other very, very well. So now that I managed to complete 2 hero quests, I know I'm going to be getting power and victory points. I managed to make life a lot better for the darkness player. That's it for darkness. We now get to go back to Sky, who has lots of power to play with and lots of things to do, including spending 2 power to turn this troll into a phoenix using our nice little power here of the Sun Spear. Trolls cost 1 little bit of power, so as long as I roll a 2 or higher, what I just did is going to succeed. If I roll a 1, it's not going to happen at all. I'm going to roll a 4, so no problem at all. I now have a sun god and a phoenix in this area over here, and I'm very, very happy we now get to slide back over to the Chaos player. The Chaos player on their turn, they're simply going to spend 1 single power. That's going to give them 1 more nest to add to the board, and we need to decide exactly where we want to add this nest, deciding based on whatever strategy we want to use. Now, there's a couple of things we need to figure out here. We know we can never erupt this nest because there's a ziggurat there, which is unfortunate for us. But we can erupt this nest and bring those units up here, and we definitely have enough power left over to do that. We know the spike is definitely going to disappear at the end of this round because somebody's going to hit 10 victory points. It's probably going to be Chaos directly, but we know it's definitely something that's going to happen. So what we're thinking long term is we know we're going to erupt this nest right here and send all 6 of those brews all the way up here to help us attack the Sky Dome and start causing some chaos and destruction up there, and possibly make life difficult for the Sky player, who we know is our current most likely threat as far as the victory points happen to go. So we can put this nest right here, which is still going to give us secondary access to the Sky Dome, which will work out perfectly for us, but also looks like a very good target for the darkness. Even though we know darkness isn't going to go for us, they're probably going to go for the shrine right here, because if they get it, they're going to finish 2 more of their hero quests. So we could probably be safe by putting this nest here, although it may give them incentive to send your units in different directions. So it may not be a good decision to do that. So having thought about this, what we're going to do is we're going to add this nest right over here, which is going to give us a secondary access point into the Sky Dome, just in case things don't go our way, because we know we're going to erupt this next nest on our very next action, which is going to leave us enough power to get all those units up in the Sky Dome and still perform a battle. Long-winded version of saying that's where the nest is going. That's it for the Chaos player. We now get to go back to the Storm player, who's simply going to spend one more power, and they're going to add one more Barbarian onto the board. That's it for the Sky player, or the Storm player. We now get to go back to the Darkness player. The Darkness player, for their turn, they're simply going to spend one power, bringing them down from 2 all the way down to 1 power, and their Troll and the Hill Mother are going to exit, and they're going to... Oops, nope, I actually don't want to do that, because I just saw long-term ramifications of doing that. I'm actually only going to send the Troll out as my sacrificial lamb. Don't want to send out the Hell Mother, because that would have been a horrible decision, because I actually don't have the last power I need for my long-term strategy. So good thing I caught that, but we'll send the Troll out. That'll be it for the Darkness player. We now get to go back to the Sky player. The Sky player knows that they're going to lose this shrine. Now we could spend power to bring a unit over here to possibly protect that shrine from the Troll, but it's not really going to help us in the long run. It's not something I'm really too worried about this time, because I have lots of other options and I have lots of power left over, and I want to compensate for losing that shrine anyway. So we're simply going to lose 1 power. We're going to take the shrine, and we're going to put the shrine right here in the same area as our sun god. And I'm wondering if that's going to be good as a long-term strategy at all, if I think about it. Lots of decisions in this game. It's always going back and forth. There's lots of ifs, ands when you're playing this game, because you need to figure out exactly what the other opponents are going to be doing on their turns. So I think I'm going to put that shrine here. I don't know if that's going to be the best idea in the long run, because I definitely want to move the sun god. And now I'm actually second guessing myself. I'm actually going to use that 1 power, and I'm going to move the Phoenix, and I'm going to move my sun god over here to this location right here, whereas actually where I want to build that shrine, that's actually a much, much better location. Now, since I moved the sun god and the Phoenix, I can move my archers if I want to, which would be pretty darn silly, because that'd leave my ziggurat completely unguarded versus the Magnamator, so I definitely don't want to do that. So that's going to be it for the Sky player. We now get to go back to the Chaos player, who we already know is going to spend 2 points, going from 4 down to 2 to use the Eruption ability, which will allow them to turn this nest, or this nest if we like, and I'm actually going to pick this nest right here, and we're going to summon all 6 of our brews into that location, which is going to give them lots of movement, lots of options, lots of places to go, and lots of decisions, and we still have power to move and also attack left over. That's it for the Chaos player. We now get to go back to the Storm player, who's simply going to spend 1 more power and summon 1 more Barbarian, and that's it for the Storm player. Back to Darkness, who's simply going to spend 1 power to perform a battle. They're going to defeat the shrine. Now they could have went against the Chaos Nest, but we want the shrine because that completes our complete set of units. That's going to give us 3 more powers that we're going to add to our board, which is going to give us more power, more victory points, and adding a lot of options for the Darkness player. The 2 gifts I'm going to take is I'm going to go ahead and take the Spectre form, which is going to allow my Spectres or my Shades to take extra damage. And the other thing I am going to take is I'm going to take the Black Market. Now both these abilities are going to be they're going to be very helpful for my Empire. They're going to allow my long-term strategies to work out really well. And this is also when I'm going to remember that I actually could have moved the Hell Mother, because I'm actually going to get some power now. Because after I complete this quest, I'm going to gain 3 power, 1 power for every enemy Empire, putting me back at 3. And then we're going to add these onto the board. And we only have 1 hero quest left to fulfill. That's going to be for our Ziggurat, which conveniently only costs us 3 power to build. And we do have a way to build it, but it's going to be built in such a location that'll be way too easy to assault. So we're probably not going to do it yet, but we still have some options of things left to do. So that's it for the Darkness player. We now get to go back to the Sky player. Now the Sky player actually has a couple options they can do. One, we can go ahead and build up over here, knowing that we're about to be beset upon by our enemy, who's going to roll 6 plus possibly, I think it's a d6, so a total of 12 dice versus our measly 3, which is going to give us an extra, at least 1 guaranteed kill. So things aren't looking too good for us right there. So I could build my Emperor up there. My Emperor is going to give me an extra 2 combat dice in the battle if I like, so that's one option. So I'll go from 3 to 5 dice versus the 12 for the enemy there. So possible, but doesn't look like it's stand a really great chance, so we may be losing our Ziggurat here very, very quickly. The other option we can do is we sow a little bit of discontent and disarray over here, and make sure that our enemy has less dice to use against us. So what we can do is we can go ahead and burn some power. Spend 2 power to be exact, and we're going to target one of these brews, and we're going to turn it into a phoenix. At least we're going to hope so, since brews only cost 1 power to bring into play. So all we need to do is make sure we don't roll a 1. We're going to roll a 5. So that brew has now become a phoenix. We've now weakened them and made ourselves a little bit stronger and given us a couple more options. We still have power left over. We're not totally out of it yet, and we still have options left over, and I think that's actually the best decision for us, because we can't let chaos be the only person who's sowing chaos and discontent. That's it for Sky. Back to chaos. The chaos player on their turn, they're going to spend 1 power. Not a big surprise, and all 5 of the brews are going to fly up over here into the Sky Dome. And that does leave chaos 1 power left over, and it's going to be pretty darn obvious exactly what chaos plans to do. But we'll worry about when that comes back around. It's now back to the storm player's turn. The storm player is going to spend 1 power to do a move, and they're going to take advantage of their special ability of the ziggurat and do some nice fancy things to get them lots of benefits. So the first thing to do, since they're spending a power for move, is they're going to use it to send this island over here, which is going to connect on the port right here. And if I understand the rules correctly, I think this is correct on how the island works. As long as you're not covering up too much stuff, this is legitimate. And then we now can move 2 spaces with our remaining units. So this unit is going to move 1, 2 to that chaos nest. This unit is going to move 1, 2 onto that chaos nest. Of course, they could attack the troll if they want to, but we're not too worried about that. We're actually just worried about making as much problems for chaos at this point if we can. So we have now moved that. We can move these remaining 2 guys here if we like, and that is an option we can do, but I don't see where we want to move them just yet, so we're actually going to leave them right there on top of those lands. And that's it for the storm player. We now get to go back to the darkness player. Darkness for their turn, they're simply going to spend 1 power, and they are going to build a shrine right here where they have the mistress, the shade, and the troll at. And now we get to go back to the sky player, who is going to spend 2 more power, the last other power, and they're going to try to turn one of these brews into their final phoenix. So again, as long as we don't roll a 1, we should be okay. We have a 3, and now we managed to bolster our forces up here, make it less easy for the chaos player to attack us, and make it easier for us to defend ourselves. That's it for the sky player. We now get to go back to the chaos player, who is all the way in now at this point. They're going to spend their last power and initiate a battle. So the first thing we need to do is figure out how powerful the Magnamator is going to be. So this is a pretty terrible roll for the Magnamator. They're going to have 1 power, so they get to roll 1 die in combat. They have 4 brews with them, so that's going to be 4 more dice in the combat for a total of 5 dice for this combat. This is not looking as well as it did a few moments ago for the chaos player, who may not win this battle, and this may not be a good decision for them at all. So 5 dice for chaos. We have 3 archers. Each one of our archers is going to give us 1 single bit of power. And our phoenix should give us 2 attack, if I'm not mistaken. Nope, they only have 1 combat. So we're going to roll 4 dice versus 5 dice for the sky player versus chaos. Since chaos is the attacker, they're going to roll their dice first. We don't have any pre-battle effects or any battle effects or any post-battle effects, at least not with these armies involved. And we're going to look at the results of our roll, and it's probably not going to look too good for the chaos player. It looks like this was all for naught for them. They have 1 kill and 1 rout. These 3 dice can be ignored. And then the sky player gets to roll their 4 dice. And we're going to get 2 routs and 2 nothings. But don't forget, we also have the ziggurat up here. And our ziggurat rate up here is going to score 1 kill for us. Actually, it scores 2 kills for us. So it actually works out perfectly for the sky player. So first things first, the attacker gets to gets to apply their effects. So as the attacker, we're going to take 2 kills, and we're going to decide that both of our brews, or 2 of our brews, are going to be defeated. Next thing we're going to figure out is we have 1 kill as the attacker, and that means Sky needs to take one of the units and kill it. So we take a Phoenix, which costs us 2 points, or an Archer, which only costs us 1 point. Logically thinking, you'd take an Archer since it only costs 1 point, but it's nice to have a Phoenix in our back supply, which allows us to turn other units into Phoenixes, and we saw how advantageous that can be for doing that. So now we've done that, we have 1 route left to decide. So we need to decide which one of our units is going to route. We'll have the Archer route. And then we need to figure out which one of the units over here is going to route on this side, and they're going to allow one of their brews to route. So now we need to figure out exactly where we want those to go. Sky gets to decide where this brew gets to go, and we're going to send this brew over here to make life a little bit more challenging for the Storm player because we don't want them to start picking up victory points. So we'll move the Brute over here, kind of breaking our alliance we had earlier. And then they need to figure out where they want this Archer to go, and they're going to send this Archer. What the heck, we'll put the Archer over here also, making things a little more difficult for everybody, giving everybody lots of extra options. That's it for the combat. We're done with the combat. Chaos initiated the combat. They're out of power. It's now back to the Storm player who gets to decide what they're going to do. They're simply going to spend 1 power, initiate a battle versus Chaos over here. They're going to defeat this nest, remove that nest from the board, making life even more difficult from Chaos. Because remember, we don't want that spike to break just yet until we're ready for it to happen. We're basically trying to control the tempo of the game as the other players, because we know if there's anybody at 10 victory points, that spike is going to break instantly. Any units left on top of that spike are going to be defeated. That's it for Storm. We now get to go back over to the Darkness player who has 2 points left over, and they're going to spend those 2 points, and they're going to turn this shrine. Actually, I'll take that back. We're thinking we need to start playing a little bit more defensively. We're actually going to spend 2 points to summon 1 shade, which costs us 2 points, and we're going to try to protect this temple, which we've left abandoned all this time. So now that we have that shade out there, we're out of power. Sky is completely out of power. Chaos is out of power. It's back time for the Storm player to figure out what they want to do with their remaining 3 power, and don't forget they also have a rune to spend if they like. Before I forget again, though, because I always forget about this when I'm trying to, I've been forgetting about it when I've been trying to have this thing where I'm playing all 4 of these factions here. But since we had 3 units did die, we are going to move up the Mad God marker, which is going to go up to 4, because I think we've had 4 total deaths overall in this game. Only deaths matter, not transmuting like I transmuted these 2 brews by using the Sun Spear power. So I think the Mad God should be at the correct level. And now we're going to spend 2 power as a Storm player, going down from 3 all the way down to 1. And we're going to bring out one of the Storm brothers, or their sister, Dot. We're going to bring him out on that location right there. We still have 1 power left. Nobody else has any power at all. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to burn this rune right now, which is going to give us 2 power. It's going to bring us from 1 all the way up to 3, and now we need to pick another player to go ahead and gain 2 power. So we need to pick a player who is going to gain the least and be the least amount of a thorn in our side if we give them the extra power. So we're going to go ahead and give Darkness that extra power, coming to a realization and discussing with them that it'd probably be best for them to put a shade out here versus trying to attack me and making things more difficult for me. At least that's what we're discussing between us. So that's one thing we can discuss and decide between us, and it's up to Darkness to figure out what they want to do. So we spent the rune. Darkness gets to decide what they want to do, and they're actually going to spend 1 power. Actually, they're going to spend both the power and bring out their second shade over here. And that's it for them. And now we get to go back to the Storm player, and we're going to spend 1 power, and we're going to move all 3 of these units 1, 2 spaces over here. And then we're going to spend 1 power, and we're going to sacrifice 1 victory point, putting us back down to 2. And we're going to go ahead and attack the Lady of Disease. The Lady of Disease has a combat of 0. We have a total combat attack of 3. All we need to do is score 1 kill, and we're going to complete 1 more of our hero quests. Not bad. So we scored 1 kill and 1 rout. The 3 is ignored. We don't need to worry about it. So the Lady of Disease can't attack us back because she's got a combat ability of 0. We managed to get 1 kill and 1 rout, so we'll go ahead and apply the kill to the Chaos player, the Lady of Disease. That's going to allow us to complete 1 hero quest, so that's actually going to be perfect for us. We will take the teleport power for killing an enemy god. The Mad God level is going to go up 1 more point here, right there. And then we're going to remember that since all those brews died in that prior battle, we're going to remember that we forgot to grab that 1 hero quest, and I do apologize for that. We're simply going to take the Oblivion, which works great with the blood sacrifice. At least it would if I had positioned myself perfectly and properly to take advantage of it. Unfortunately, I haven't done that yet, and Chaos has been having a little bit of a tough time. But having said that, they're still leading the victory point, so it doesn't really matter to say that they're having a tough time, because overall they're really not having that tough of a time. That's it. We still have 1 point left over for the Storm player. We're simply going to spend that 1 point. We're going to bring out that shrine because we know we can protect that shrine. And not only that, but when I defeated that nest over here earlier, I completely forgot to turn it into a temple by using my insurgency power, which I forgot to do, and we're actually looking pretty darn good. That's all the power spent for all of our players. Everybody's finished all their actions. We're done with the action phase. It's now time to move to the power phase. Well, I'll just go ahead and speed everything up and give everybody their power and move over to the console phase. At the end of the power phase, we see that the Sky player is down to 8 power, the Darkness player is down to 8 power. Storm player has jumped ahead thanks to their oh boy, I can't talk today. How about inferiority complex ability, which is going to put them at 12 power, which actually helped the Chaos player, because remember, you can never have less than half the power of whoever has the most power. So I brought Chaos from 5 all the way up to 6 power. So the first player is actually going to change. Our new first player is going to be the Storm player, who needs to decide if we want to go with Fluffy facing clockwise or if we want to go facing counterclockwise. So Storm decides that they actually want to see exactly what Chaos is doing, because we're not too worried about the Darkness player. So we're going to rotate it, and we're going to show that we're going to be going counterclockwise next. After that, the next thing to do is figure out how many victory points every one of our players is going to get. We're going to get 1 victory point for every building, plus we're going to get a victory point for every completed shard, and this does mean that the Chaos spike is just about to break here very, very quickly. So first things first, we start with the Storm player. Needs to figure out how many victory points they're going to get. We have a Ziggurat in play, that's 1 victory point, a Temple, that's 2, and we have a Shrine, that's 3. Plus we happen to have 1 completed shard, so that's going to be a 4th victory point. That's going to move us from 2 all the way up to 6 victory points. Next, we're going to go over to the Chaos player, who is going to go ahead and they're going to gain 1, 2, 3 for the 3 nests they have in play. They have 1 completed shard. That's going to be 4 victory points. That's going to move them from 6 victory points all the way up to 10. And that means the shard, or the spike, is going to shatter, and we now have the Chaos Rift. This Temple, this Barbarian, and this Troll all are going to be sucked into the Chaos Rift. But they don't count for kills, and we're going to go back to their players' respective pools in just a moment. We just put them there. I just like to put them there just for easy remembering, to let us know that we do need to take care of the spike here very, very quickly. And then we're going to finish with the rest of our victory points. The next person in order is going to be the Sky player with victory points. We're going to gain 1 for 1 completed shard. Plus we have 1 Ziggurat in play only, I believe, so that's going to be 2 total victory points for us. We're going to go up from 5 all the way up to 7 victory points. Then finally we're going to go to the Darkness player, who has a Temple. We have a Shrine, and we have another Shrine in play. So that's going to be 3 total buildings for us, plus we have 2 fragments, or 2 quest fragments completed. So that's going to be a total of 5 victory points, moving us from 4 all the way up to 9 victory points. We see that so far this is an extremely close game. Everybody is very, very close in their victory points, close in their totals, and it really could be anybody's game at this point. No, it's not really a foregone conclusion. We're about to enter the 4th round of the game here very, very quickly. But that's it for the victory points. Everybody has their victory points. Now we need to see what happens exactly when when the rift, the spike, shatters and becomes the Chaos Rift. Now the Chaos Rift is open. There's a couple different things that need to happen. This seems a little bit complex in the beginning, but trust me, this works a lot better when you have multiple players and not just one person trying to show everything for all the factions involved in the game. So again, this will look a little bit complex, but trust me, in actual reality, it's much simpler to do. So when the rift fragment, when the spike shatters, the first thing that happens is the Chaos player is going to get a rune for it happening, and we're going to get a very nice rune, gain 2 power, which is going to help us quite a bit, especially in later rounds. The next thing that's going to happen is we're going to get the Catastrophe, which is going to remind us that we need to take another rune at the beginning of every single Chaos Rift phase. So now that we're officially starting the Chaos Rift phase, that does mean the Chaos player is going to take another rune. This other rune we got the moment the spike shattered during the scoring phase. This rune is coming at the start of the Chaos Rift phase. So now we get a second rune, which isn't that great for us. It's going to give us 2 victory points. Not really what we're looking for, but again, not too absolutely terrible. Now that this is done, the next part of the thing we need to do is we need to figure out what everybody is sacrificing to the Chaos Rift and how much power everybody's going to be sacrificing to the Chaos Rift. First things first, every single player needs to move a unit to the Chaos Rift or a building. Sky's going to go first, and they're obviously not going to send the Ziggurat because that'd be pretty darn stupid at this point. So we're going to simply send an archer over to the Chaos Rift. Next, the Darkness player needs to send a unit also. We're going to go ahead and decide that we're going to send a Troll to the Chaos Rift. And actually, looking at our supplies and looking at our abilities. And sorry, this is where I actually remembered I missed one part of the power phase where, since I have the Hellmother in play, these Trolls should have actually entered there also. So that's why I'm a little bit confused here. So we're going to take this Troll out here and add it to the Chaos Rift. And now finally the Storm player needs to figure out if they want to send a unit or a building over to the Chaos Rift. We're going to say we're going to send a unit, and we can send this Barbarian over here, or we can leave that Barbarian there. It is up to us. I'm thinking we're actually going to sacrifice that Barbarian and send them to the Chaos Rift. Now, Chaos does not sacrifice any units to the Chaos Rift, which is very nice. So now that we sacrifice all of our units to the Chaos Rift, everybody needs to start sacrificing power. Everybody needs to take a die in their hand, and they're going to hide that die, and they're going to face it to a number anywhere from 1 to 6, and that's how much power they're going to sacrifice to the Chaos Rift to help close it. And again, this is all going to be based on a die roll eventually, so the more power we sacrifice, the easier it is, or the better chances that we have that the Chaos Rift is also going to close. Also, on top of that, whoever donates the least amount of power is also going to take a penalty. So thinking about that and knowing that Storm happens to have a lot of power, we're actually going to sacrifice 4 power. Again, we don't show it to the other players. We cover it with our hand until everybody decides how much power they want to sacrifice. Next, Darkness, who happens to have 8 power left over, we're going to decide that we're going to sacrifice 2 power, but also thinking that Chaos is probably going to sacrifice at least 1 or 2 power because they don't want the penalty, although it's only a victory point, so we'll think about that, and we're just going to stick with 2. And then finally, Sky is going to decide that we're going to sacrifice 2 power also. And then now we get to go to the Chaos player, who only has 6 power in their hand, so sacrificing power is going to be very difficult for them. They don't really want to do it, but they're going to stick with only sacrificing 1 power only. After everybody's figured out how much power they're going to sacrifice, everybody reveals their die, and then they spend the power that they happen to sacrifice. So Chaos is going to go from 6 down to 5. The Storm player is going to go from 12 all the way down to 8. Darkness is going to go from 8 all the way down to 6. And then the Sky player is also going to go from 8 down to 6. And then we're going to figure out what our total commitment is going to be. We're going to add up everything from all the players minus however much Chaos decided to add to the total. So we have 4 plus 2 is 6 plus 2 more is 8. Minus 1 is 7. So I'm going to change these dice just so I can remember this math so I don't make any mistakes. We have a total power commitment of 7, and then we need to figure out which player committed the least amount of power, which happened to be Chaos in this instance. They are going to lose 1 single victory point for being such cheapskates. Now, it doesn't matter who it is. Whoever donated the least amount of power is going to suffer that penalty. And there happens to be a tie, such as all 3 of these players only committed 2 power. Every one of them would lose a single victory point. Now that we've done all this, we need to figure out what our total amount that the Chaos Rift is sucking from the entire planet. So we see that we have 7 power being sucked from the planet, plus we're going to take the amount of power it costs for all the units currently in the Rift. So as turns go on and more units get added to the Rift, it's going to be easier and easier for the Chaos Rift to close because their power cost for all these units is going to make it added onto the power we need to sacrifice. But back on topic, we have 7 power sacrificed. That was a total of 8 minus the 1 for a total of 7. Plus 3 from the units that are currently locked in the Chaos Rift, and they're going to stay there until this Chaos Rift closes, is a total of 10. Now that we have our total, and I know again this seems very confusing, but trust me, in actual play this is a heck of a lot easier to do. Now that we got our total, 10, we need to roll 1 6-sided die for every single faction that happens to be in the game. Since we're playing a 4-player game, that means we need to roll 4 dice, and then we need to compare that to our total commitment. And now it turns into a simple roll of dice. And basically what we need to do is we need to roll on 4 dice, since we're playing a 4-player game, less than the total commitment. If we roll equal to or greater than the total commitment, then the Chaos Rift is going to stay open. Since we have a 7 plus 3 is 10, if I roll 9 or less on 3 dice, not impossible, the Chaos Rift is instantly going to close. If I roll a 10 or a higher total on all these dice, the Chaos Rift is going to stay open. So now we got our 10, we got our dice, we're going to roll them, and we're going to look at our total result here. We're going to roll a 6, 10, 11, 15. The Chaos Rift stays open. These units are locked in the Chaos Rift, and we are done with the Chaos Rift segment. Now, if we were at 20 victory points, we'd move on to the Great Compromise. We're not there yet, so that is going to be the end of the Chaos Rift struggle. And it's now time to start the next round of the game. So now that we figured this out, we're done with, I think we're in the 4th round of the game now. We are starting with the Storm player, because remember the Storm player has Fluffy. We're playing in a counterclockwise manner right now. And now we need to realize that now that the Chaos Rift is open, these units are permanently locked in there. The Chaos Rift does not connect to anything. It's pretty much nothingness. So we now have lost access from going to the Spike, to the Moon, or the Sky Dome. So now the only access is to the Sky Dome and the Moon are up here or on the bottom of the board. That's enough about that. Let's go back to the game and figure out what strategies we want to do, starting with the Storm player. We're going to start with the Storm player, and the very first thing they're going to do is they're going to spend a total of 4 power, going from 8 all the way down to 4 power, and they are going to bring in their great leader and bring him onto the board. Now, I don't need to bring him into play on the ziggurat. I'm just trying to do that to make it look extra cool right now. So we're going to bring him into play on top of the ziggurat. That's an expenditure of 4 power, and since we summoned the Thunder King, we now get to complete one more requirement for one more hero quest. We're going to go ahead and take the Whirlwind ability, which is going to allow us to summon any Storm Brothers into any battle we happen to be in, which is going to allow us to move quite a well across the battlefield and bring units in very, very well, which is going to help us quite a bit. So we don't have to worry about the Storm King being jumped all of a sudden, because we know if he's jumped, he can at least pull in one of the Storm Brothers, or in this case, the Storm Sister, into the battle. So that's it for the Storm player. We now get to go back to the Chaos player, who needs to make a couple decisions and figure out exactly what they want to do, because they've been kind of treading water for a little bit. So we're going to decide that we're going to go ahead and spend this ability, burn this rune right here, which is going to give them 2 more power, making them go from 5 all the way to 7. And now we need to figure out exactly which action we want to perform on our turn. We do have a couple different options, but we know what we need right now more than anything is we need power, and we need to start doing things and making life a little bit better for us, because so far we're not doing so well. So we have 4 brews in our reserves. We know that we need to start getting victory points, but victory points are going to come from getting buildings out on the board. So we're simply going to spend 1 victory point, and we're going to put a nest out on the board right there. That's going to be it. We're done. We now get to move over to the Sky player. The Sky player on their turn, they're simply going to spend 1 power to go ahead and activate movement. Now remember, anytime the Sun God moves, all their other units on the board also get to move if they like, and we're going to move from this area all the way into the sea, which happens to be the same sea we're already in. So that gives us a little bit more reinforcements for the 1 expenditure of power. We could move our archers if we want to. We don't want to. So we're going to be done with that, and now we get to move over to the Darkness player. The Darkness player is sensing a little bit of eruption coming from Magna Mater, decides that they want to protect this area right here, so they're simply going to spend 3 power, going from 6 all the way down to 3. They're going to turn this temple into a ziggurat, which guarantees that they don't have to worry about that nest erupting, making life difficult for them. And it also allows them to get their final ability by building their ziggurat, which means we have a couple different things that are going to happen. Since another empire has all 6 of their gifts, that also means that the Storm player is also going to get their next gift, which is going to be... Actually, I think we're going to go ahead and take the Weather Command gift. So first thing happens, since we took this hero quest right here, we're going to gain 4 power, because that's the ability of that. That's going to put us from 4 all the way up to 8 power, which is going to be very nice for us. That's going to help us quite a bit for what we want to do this turn. Back over to the Darkness player, and this is where I actually forgot to, or I realized where I forgot to use the Black Market of Power during the council phase last turn. And I hate to do the retcon here, but I do want to show you how the game fully plays, and I apologize for that. Trust me when I say this game plays a lot easier where you're not playing 4 very asymmetrical factions. So I was kind of expecting to make a couple mistakes. I was hoping I wouldn't make any, but I knew that was kind of like a fool's dream right there. So now I'm going to realize that I forgot to use the Black Market ability, which I should have done during the council phase, which basically was I was supposed to, during the council phase that we just finished, I was supposed to draw a rune, and I was supposed to read it out loud. And this one says, Behemoth, post-battle turn all roll misses in this battle into routes. Once I've read that rune, I have 2 options. I can give this to another player, and that player decides if I gain 2 power or a rune, or I keep it for myself, and then I lose 2 power or lose a victory point. And to clarify, if I give this to another player, they decide if I gain a victory point or 2 power, or I can keep it for myself. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this rune myself, and that's actually powerful, turning all misses into a route. I don't think that's one I'm actually going to give away, so we're actually going to keep that for 1 victory point. And again, this all would have occurred during the last council phase. I apologize for totally messing that mistake up. But let's go back into the actual action phase for the current round we happen to be in. We've gained the Ancestral Worship for doing the final thing of placing our ziggurat. That's the last action for this player. We still have 3 power left over. We're still going a counterclockwise manner. We're now back to the Storm player, who has 8 power, and they only have 1 more hero quest left to complete. So for our turn, first things we need to do is we need to get this final hero quest done, because 2 players now actually have runes. Chaos and Darkness actually have a rune. So we're going to complete that, and we're going to get our final hero quest, giving us our final ability. Next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to take our turn. We're going to spend 1 power, and we're going to move over here to this area. And again, we're hoping for a very nice suicide run, hoping our champion's going to die so we can bring him back to the overworld so we can start interacting with us. Or maybe we're hoping that we're going to beg and hopefully hope the Darkness player is going to let us out. It's not going to happen. So we're going to have to go for a suicide run, and that's going to end it for the Storm player. We're now back to the Chaos player, who's simply going to spend one more power, and they're going to add another nest onto the board, and they're going to add it right here in this location right here. Actually, I don't know if that's a good thing to do at this point. I know we want to siphon off the other players, but then they're just going to attack it, and he has plenty of power to do that. So instead of doing that, we're going to build this chaos nest. Not at all. And instead of spending one power, we're going to spend 2 power, and we're actually going to embed this nest right here. That'll be it for the chaos player's turn. Back to the sky player who has 5 power. They're going to spend 1 of that 5 power to build a shrine on the same location where the sun god happens to be. We now get to go back to the darkness player who currently has 3 power left over. We have all our units onto the board, which means the Hell Mother is going to be very, very powerful. So now we're going to do some very mean, evil, devious things. And of course, that guarantees that the Storm player leaves their champion in Hell, where they can't be a problem for us. The Darkness player on their turn, they're simply going to spend 1 power, and they're going to move 3 of their units over here, because now they have all their abilities. They know that they can start routing everybody and start taking over the surface world. They start routing everybody well. It's unfortunate they're going to lose a shrine, but we really don't care, and we don't want to give this person a chance to die, so we're going to leave them there to suffer for a little bit longer because it's mean, it's cruel, and it seems like a really good idea. We're now back to the Storm player, who is now a little bit annoyed because their idea that they're hoping to do just got ruined because the Darkness player didn't want to play fair and play by the rules that they were setting for the game. So we now need to figure out what we want to do differently and figure out exactly what we want to do. And we want to figure out a way that we're going to get our champion out so we can start doing more powerful things because he's our best warrior. So the Sky player for their turn, the Storm player, we're going to go from 7 down to 5, and we're going to summon another one of our Sky brothers onto the world. They cost 2 power. We're done. We're now back over to the Chaos player. They're going to spend another 2 power, going down from 4 down to 2, and they're going to embed this nest over here next. And then finally we get to go back to the Sky player, who currently has 4 power, and they see that they're currently being surrounded. So we're going to spend the amount of power it's going to take to bring our Emperor into play. He does cost 2 power, and he is one of our heavy hitters. So it's going to cost us 2 power to help even up this battlefield, because we're seeing that there's going to be a battle here very, very quickly. And speaking of which, we now get to go back to the Darkness player. They're going to spend 1 power, and we're going to initiate a battle between Darkness and Sky. So now that we spent the power to initiate the battle, we need to figure out how many dice we happen to be rolling. Well, the Hell Mother herself gets to roll 8 dice or just by herself, because she doesn't have any units back in her back supply. That's basically how her power works. Plus, we happen to have 2 trolls, which is going to give us 2 more dice to roll in this battle. That's going to give us a total of 10 dice to roll for the Darkness player. Now, the Sun God player, they get 3 dice for the Sun God. We get 1 die for each one of the Phoenixes, and finally the Emperor gets to roll 2 dice also. Now, neither one of us has any pre-battle effects. We have some post-battle effects, especially the Darkness player, but we don't have to worry about that until the battle happens to be over. So the attacking player gets to roll their attacking dice first. And we're going to ignore anything as a 1, 2, or 3. We're simply going to remove anything as a 1, 2, or 3 because it's not going to have any effect at all. And then the Sky player gets to roll their dice. And again, we're going to ignore all 1s, 2s, and 3s, and we're going to get the final results for our dice. So we see that Sky has 1 kill and 2 routes. Darkness has 1 kill, and they happen to have 4 routes total. So starting with the Sky player, they need to figure out who's going to take the death. We're going to have the Phoenix take the first death, and it's going to be removed from the map. And then Darkness needs to figure out which one of their units is going to take the death. Well, it's pretty obvious it's going to be the Troll. So we'll pull the Troll off, and both these kill results are now taken care of. Now we need to figure out the routes. Sky has 2 routes, which means 2 units are going to be routed. Darkness has 4 routes, which means all 3 of those units are going to be routed. Now, generally, when you're routed, your opponent gets to decide exactly where you get to go and where you're going to be moved to. At this point in the game, we need to start thinking about global long-term strategies and what we want to do and how we want to be affecting things. So looking at the routes that we want to do, we want to start thinking about long-term stuff that we can do. So starting with the attacker, they're going to go ahead and route the defender all the way over here to Hell. And they're going to pick this specific region because, again, they want to kind of do things, and they have long-term strategies and stuff they want to do and kind of give incentives and a little bit of planning that they want to do. So it's part of the thought process. So that's the first thing they're going to do. And then since we routed an enemy into Hell, and thanks to our special power, we can take a victory point or we can take a power. we're going to take a point of power because we need power to keep doing all the things we do. So now the Sky player, they're going to route the Hell Mother and the Troll onto the Kylora landmass here because that's going to allow Sky, hopefully, the opportunity to attack if they want to, or at least give some incentive or something like that. So again, that's part of the long-term strategy, and that's exactly why they're doing that. So that's all the routings for all the players. That's the end of the battle. That's all the post-battle effects we need to worry about for these players. Unfortunately, Sky did not have their arrogance ability, which would have really helped them in this battle quite a bit because they could have made the Hell Mother not be part of the battle. Unfortunately, we didn't have it. Poor planning. We're going to have to make some better plans in the future. But that's it for the battle. We now get to go back to the Storm player. The Storm King player on their turn decides that they want to make a little bit of chaos for the other players, so we're simply going to spend 2 power, 1, 2, and we're going to activate our teleport ability. And we're going to transport ourselves along with the Hell Mother over here. It normally would cost us 1 power, but it's going to cost us 2 power because we took a greater god with us. And that's a total expenditure of 2 power. Now, normally we'd have to worry about a Ziggurat being undefended by this troll. But remember, Ziggurat scores 1 immediate kill, so we don't have to worry about the troll attacking because it will be defeated. So the Ziggurat is more than able to take care of itself. We still have 3 power left. It's now time for the Chaos player, who is trying to play a silent, don't hurt me, don't come after me game right now because they're trying to rebuild their power base that they've lost. And they're simply going to build another nest, and it's going to be the end of their turn, and we now get to go back to the Sky player. Now the Sky player is a little bit upset and a little bit annoyed because all of their decisions have just been basically shot down very quickly because the Hell Mother sent them back to Hell, which will reduce their power base. The Sky player for their turn realizes that they don't want to be stuck back in Hell again because if they do, they already have their god plus 2 of their units down there, which is going to really halve their amount of units they have available for battles, which is going to make life very, very difficult for them. So they need to make a deal very, very quickly and hope somebody's going to give them permission. Luckily, we do have 2 different armies who can give us permission. Sky obviously is not going to give us permission. I'm sorry, Storm's not going to give us permission because they know if we come out, we're going to come out right here where we have a very nice juicy target to go ahead and attack. And they're not liking that idea. But Darkness does like that idea. So Darkness is going to go ahead and give us permission. So we're going to spend 1 power to exit, but Darkness has 1 caveat. They say we can exit as long as soon as we exit, we attack the space. We decide we're going to do it because we can probably swallow the deaths, and hopefully our sun god is not going to be defeated unless the dice are really not in our favor. And we're hoping that's not going to happen. So we're simply going to move all 3 of our units out, and we're going to be very happy with these results because now we know that I, as a Sky player, can still use my sun god. And Darkness knows that we're going to get rid of a thorn that's staying and hanging right on her borders. So that's it for the Sky player's turn. It's now back to the Darkness player who still has 2 power left over. The Darkness player, for their turn, they're simply going to spend their last remaining 2 temple and turn the shrine, their last remaining 2 power and turn that shrine into a temple. Luckily, this temple is guarded, so they'll be able to hold on to this, which is going to give them victory points and also power. That's it for them. We now get to go back to the Storm player, who has 3 power. They're going to spend 2 of that 3 power to teleport themselves and their champion out and put their champion and their storm god out in the same area right here, getting ready to be protected in case the sun god decides to hold their end of the bargain and complete the attack versus this player. So that's it. We have 1 power left over. Chaos has 1 power left over. They're going to spend their final point of power and they're going to place down another nest out here on the board, and we're going to simply place that nest right here, knowing that Darkness can't do anything and take it out. So that's it for Chaos. Sky has 1 power left over, and also the Storm player also has only 1 power left over. The Sky King, the Sun God himself, the leader of the Sky faction, has decided that he's not really feeling suicidal and going against this large of a force that is going to have quite a bit of dice to roll against him. We're looking at the combat of the Lord is going to be the total of gain gifts. So he's going to have 6 attack, plus 2 dice, plus 1, 2, 3, for a total of 10 total dice. So the chances, 11 dice. So the chances of us, 12 dice. Chances of us surviving this battle or not getting killed is going to be pretty slim. And the last thing we want to do is get sent back just where we left from. So we're going to simply spend 1 power, unfortunately. And we're going to evacuate and head over here to the shrine where we can hopefully be a little bit defended and a little bit protected, and hopefully we're going to last a little bit longer. Darkness is done. We're now back to the Storm player who needs to figure out exactly what they want to do. They have a couple options they can do here right now. Not too many options though. Simply looking, they have 1 power left over. They're simply going to use that 1 little bit of power and they're going to use it to go ahead and build a shrine. That's it for everybody. Everybody's burned all their power, and we're completely done with this turn. It's now time to move back to the power phase. After all this, we move on to the power phase, and I'm actually going to stop this video here right now because the next thing we're going to move on to is the power phase. All the players are going to gain their power. Then after that, we're going to move over to the Chaos Rift. If the Chaos Rift closes, stays open, we'll know from there. And things are going to go on. Players are going to slowly get their units sucked in there until that final rift finally closes. Chaos is going to have to make a comeback. They're going to need much more power, so they keep this rift open. So that's going to be their objective, so they can win the game by keeping the victory points rolling in for them. And then finally, if we ever get to 20 victory points, which is really going to happen pretty darn soon, at the end of this turn, we're actually might even be there, if I'm not mistaken. We'll be very close. Because Chaos is at 10, they're going to earn 8 victory points alone, just looking at the board, and I think it may actually be higher than that, but they're going to earn 8 victory points right here and now at the end of this victory phase. So we're going to be getting close to that great compromise. The only thing I haven't shown you is that great compromise, and basically what that means is whichever player is the current first player, they're going to decide if they want to sacrifice half of their victory points to gain, or sorry, half of their current power to gain 5 victory points. If they do decide to do this, and this may be a good or bad decision, they're going to gain the 5 victory points. And the next person in clockwise order, or I'm sorry, in player order, is going to gain 4 victory points. Next player is going to gain 3. Next is going to gain 2, and so on and so forth, down and possibly into the negatives. You could play this game as a 7 or an 8 player game. If the first player decides that they don't want to sacrifice half their power to gain the 5 victory points, the next player in player order gets the chance to make that decision. And it's going to go around to all the players. Eventually, somebody's going to make that decision that they're willing to sacrifice 4, 5, 6 power to gain 5 victory points, and then everybody else is going to gain the remainder going down. And again, if you're going through a 7 or 8 player game, somebody's going to start getting negative victory points. So you're going to see that once the great compromise comes around, the game is going to start getting quicker. You only have 20 points left to the game, and at the end of every single round, you're going to be giving somebody 5 victory points minimum from the great compromise. So you can basically see that once you get to the halfway point, the game is going to start cycling a lot faster. You're also going to see, or you should have seen from this gameplay video, that players, once they start getting the bases of power going, once they start getting their units out there, and once they start figuring out their strategy and their tactics, and especially once they start getting their hero quests done, the game is also going to start accelerating and start snowballing. Now, the interesting thing about this game, and here I'm sliding over kind of into my review and my final opinions of the game, because I want to do this all as one single video. I didn't want to do multiple videos normally like I do. If you've been around, see my channel before, you know I do an overview video. I do a tutorial video, I do a sample gameplay video, then I do a final review video. Well, since this is based on a print and play, a game that isn't even finished yet, a game that's up on Kickstarter, just basically throwing this all into one video. And it's the other reason why I'm cutting this short, because I'm pretty sure we're getting close to 2 hours now, which is definitely not what I wanted to do. I was hoping to hit around maybe an hour and 15, but I know that's not going to happen. So that's why we're definitely cutting it short here. So, talking about the gameplay itself for the game. The Gods War is an asymmetrical game, and I'm sure you've seen from watching the video, it's not like Cthulhu Wars. On the surface, you may think, Petersen games, big giant miniatures, it's Cthulhu Wars all over again. Nope, it's not. The game plays a lot differently. There are enough differences to the point that I would say, if I could go back in time, if Petersen Games had this game and Cthulhu Wars designed and up on Kickstarter at the exact same time, I would have backed the Gods War. Not saying Cthulhu Wars is a bad game, but I like the way the Gods War plays. It plays a little bit more deliberate. I like the back and forth of the game. I like the way the strategies play of the game a little bit better. And I like how it's a little bit less dice dependent. I know when I play Cthulhu Wars, depending on what faction you can play, it's not uncommon for me to throw 20 dice across the board just for my one roll. And I think the most I've ever seen in this game, on average, going by average, is about 12 or 14. So you don't see tons of dice being slung across the board all the time. I also like that there's no predetermined starting location for all the factions. You basically start with your very first move, and you're basically saying where you're going to start the game because you place your very first shrine, and eventually your second shrine, third shrine, upgraded temples, and everything like that. But that basically decides where you can build. You're not shoehorned into deciding where you're going to build every single time you play like Cthulhu Wars. So that's something I really appreciate. I also like how you can move around the board more. I like the extra rules and little idiosyncrasies of the game that may seem kind of silly, but if you see how they fit in with the theme of the game, they're actually really, really cool. I like how players can get trapped in hell. I like how they have to debate, and I like how it creates much more diplomacy to this game. And that's another thing I really enjoyed about this game. This game offers a lot more diplomacy to it than I think Cthulhu Wars does. And it's forced diplomacy, especially when you start looking at the Great Compromise and the Chaos Rift. Now, I'm sure the game is going to play differently once you start throwing chaos in or out. Start looking at all the other factions. Now, there's 8 total factions available for the game, of which I only have 4 of the 8 factions. And I know the other 4 factions are definitely going to play differently, so I have no doubts about that in my mind. But I've seen how it plays with chaos, and I can kind of do a little bit of imagination, imagine how the game's going to play a little bit different without the chaos faction, and how the chaos rift is going to play out. And you may actually have a game where nobody's really going to really care about the chaos rift if the chaos player isn't involved, except for the fact that everybody's units is slowly being sucked into the chaos rift. So you're going to be losing access to units, so eventually you're going to have to, as a group, take care of the chaos rift. So that's kind of a really cool mechanic. I also enjoy these runes here. Now, I know they are a little bit of a randomness, and they add a little bit extra randomness. And I like them, and at times I'm kind of annoyed by them. It depends on the luck of the draw, because some of these runes can be pretty powerful. Well, I'll take that back. All of these runes are powerful, but sometimes they can be used at a very opportune moment that can really help your faction out quite a bit. And it's something you really have to plan for. And as I play the game more and more, and I start learning all the runes of the game, and I can watch what people are doing and see they're holding a rune in their hand, and I can kind of assume what they're doing because I know what the runes are. I've appreciated the runes more, but at first, when I first started playing the game, I thought they were a little bit unbalancing and a little bit, well, unbalancing is a bad word. I thought they were a little bit too random. But again, as I played them more, I started appreciating them. I started liking them, liking the extra randomness they can throw in. Now, the game has, there's gobs of them. There's at least 30 plus runes for the game, and they all add different things. All of them give a little bit of power and a little bit of extra special abilities, and they're going to randomize the game a little bit. So that's actually a really cool aspect of the game I really like. So overall, if I'm just looking at the basic game of the Gods War, I enjoyed it. If I was to make a choice between this and Cthulhu Wars, nowadays you can actually make the decision because, you know, Cthulhu Wars, the Kickstarter is still actually, or not the Kickstarter, but I'm not a huge Kickstarter backer. Somebody correct me, the CrowdOx thing where you can late back or whatever it is. Again, I'm not a huge Kickstarter person, so somebody can correct me with the correct term, but I believe they're, the Pledge Manager, that's what I'm looking for. Their late Pledge Manager is still open, which is kind of interesting because Petersen Games is actually right now competing against themselves because you can buy Cthulhu Wars right now, buy late pledge, or you can buy the Gods War right now by doing a Kickstarter backing. So they're kind of competing against themselves, but that was their decision. I'm not going to comment on them. I just thought it was a little bit strange. But you're looking at a game here that is got a lot of cool miniatures in it. Looking at the mock-ups, you got a rough idea of how the game plays. So overall, I was really impressed with the game, but there's one huge caveat and one big disappointment that I do have with the game, and it's going to be the price. Here's my biggest thing with the Gods War, and even with the Cthulhu Wars and any kind of blingy, well overproduced game. Let's start with the bottom line here. Let's say that if money wasn't an option, and you had a lot of money and that wasn't a big deal for you, then this is kind of a moot point. It's kind of pointless. If you're a dink, you know, dual income, no kids type of family, money really isn't that much of an option to you. You don't mind spending $300, $400 on a single game because it's not really that big deal because you have lots of disposable income, so it's not that huge of a deal. So I'm not talking to that group of people. The group of people I'm talking to is the group of people that needs to sit down and decide if they're willing to spend $300 on a single game. Now, there's no argument that there's a value in this game. That $300 that you're going to spend on this game, and yes, I know a lot of people are going to say it's only $125, but it's really not, and I'll get to that in just a second, why it's not $125. If you want to spend $300 on this game, you're going to get your value. Now, of course, these miniatures are not the miniatures that come with the game. I put them on the board just to give you an idea of what the game is going to look like. Now, every single faction in the base game is going to come with 4 large miniatures for the greater gods. They're all going to be about 7 to 8 inches tall. So we're looking at huge, gigantic miniatures. And even all the way down to the basic miniatures, they're all going to be about the size of these miniatures here. So you're going to have a wide scale miniatures all the way from about 32 millimeter heroic scale all the way up to 180, 190 millimeters tall. Plus you're going to have a really high quality board. Plus you're going to have all these components. Plus there's tons of dice. So in my mind, there's definitely no question that the dollar value is there for what you're getting in the box. My problem is spending that money in the first place. Now again, like I said, people who don't have kids and have dual incomes, lots of disposable income, It's not going to be a big deal to you. But for every other gamer out in the market, it's going to be a huge deal for you. Now, you can say that the God's War is only $125 for the base game. And you'd be right. You get 4 factions in the base game, and you can actually get a pretty darn good amount of enjoyment out of the game. But here's the problem. Petersen Games has backed themselves into a corner as a designer, the game designer. And when you're a premium game designer, you have to compete with shelf space in the marketplace, and you also have to compete with the fact that your games are going to cost a lot of money. So if I want to buy the God's War and spend $125, I'd get some good value out of it, especially when I look at everything that's going to be inside the box. But I'm not going to get all the replay I want out of it because I'm eventually going to want to get the expansions. One expansion box, the only expansion box you can buy for the game, is another $150 purchase. And again, these are looking at Kickstarter prices. Once this hits retail, if it hits retail, and I'll cover that point in just a second, it's going to be even more money. So if I want to get even one expansion for this game, I'm going to have to spend another $150. I'm all the way up to the $300 barrier. Yeah, I'm getting lots of value for that money. I'm getting my dollar's worth. I'm not arguing that point. I'm arguing the point that I'm spending $300 on a single game. And to me, for somebody who has kids, somebody who doesn't want to spend $300, $400 on a single game, that's a heck of a lot of money, and that's a decision I have to make if I want to buy the God's War. And that also doesn't even factor in the fact that right now that Petersen Games is competing with themselves because the late pledge manager for Cthulhu Wars is still open. So for me, somebody, and again, these are the decisions I'm making right now. I still have a week to go before this Kickstarter closes. But this is why I haven't thrown my money at this game yet so far. And these are the things I'm deciding. It's kind of why I made this video in the first place. I could go right now. I have Cthulhu Wars. I have the base box. I backed Onslaught number 2 for $150, which means eventually I'm going to get some extra things. But I basically have the 4 basic factions for the game. And I'm not going to get anything else because Petersen Games has 0 retail presence. And the reason why they have 0 retail presence is because your average retailer is not going to stock 150, well, in Cthulhu Wars aspect, a $200 game. It's a box this big, this high, when they can have 1 point of sale, or they can have a half dozen point of sales for $50 or $60 a piece in the exact same shelf space. Not only that, Petersen Games has set themselves as a boutique designer, so a lot of the designers or the board game companies aren't stocking the product because of the shelf space and the cost, and it's just hard to convince a customer to walk in the door and plop down $200 for a single game. Okay, online game stores may give it to you for $150, but we're talking online games versus retail space. It's totally different things. So I could right now spend $125 plus $30 for shipping, so basically spend $150 to get the God's War, which is going to be a completely new, unique game, and I can play it. Or I can take that $150, spend it on the pledge manager for Cthulhu Wars and get a lot more factions and give me a lot more replay for Cthulhu Wars. So that's my first barrier I need to decide. The second thing I need to decide is if I want the God's War, I have to go all in. Because like I said with Cthulhu Wars, and Petersen Games has already proved this with Cthulhu Wars, they don't have any retail shelf space, period. They have no retail presence, nothing like that. So I either have to go all in with the God's War now, or I have to go in nothing, because if I go in just for the base set, and Petersen Games has even said that themselves, there's not a guarantee that the expansions will be in the retail marketplace. So now I have to fight this. Do I go with the God's War, throw in $300 for a single game, or do I go with Cthulhu Wars, spend $150, get 3 extra factions, and get them shipped to my door? So that's a hard decision I'm having to make, and I think it's a decision a lot of people are having to make. I've been watching the Kickstarter for this game, and I think it's at about $450,000, which is actually pretty damn good if you want to be honest for it. I mean, it's $500,000, but you have to think about it this way. It's $500,000 spread among only 1,200 backers, approximately. And I'm going off the top of my head here. I can look at the Kickstarter and get the exact amounts. But my point remains is that there's only about 1,200 people buying this game, and I think it's because Petersen Games is starting to back themselves into a corner. Now, don't get me wrong, Sandy Petersen is a fantastic game designer. He's proved it with the God's War, he's proved it with Cthulhu Wars, and I think he's proved it with his other games. Now, I haven't played them, but I've read up on them, and they seem pretty good. Plus, the guy's been in the industry for 25 years. The guy makes really fantastic games. But the problem is, if he's going to continue to keep making these boutique games, he's going to continue to minimize his market space. He's going to continue to minimize the amount of people who can enjoy his games. And I think he's going to continue to back himself into a corner where he's either going to constantly rely on Kickstarter or he's never going to be able to move any of his product. And it's kind of a disappointment for me. And look, I get it. I understand everybody enjoys their giant miniatures. I enjoy them. I have a heck of a lot of fun with Cthulhu Wars. But I know that more people could enjoy the game if all the miniatures were this size, the board was shrunk down, and you had the game on the marketplace for $75 or $80. Then you're not going to have 1,200 people playing your game. You're going to have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 8,000 people playing your game because this is a damn good game. It's just that not everybody can afford it. The bottom line here I'm basically trying to make here is that if you have the money to throw away, and I shouldn't say throw away because that's really an improper term and it kind of sounds derogatory because it's not true. You're not throwing it away. But if you have the disposable income that you can afford to burn, that's going to be burned for a year before you can get anything back, then I can definitely say the Gods War is really awesome. It's a fantastic game, well designed. The factions play really, really great together, but you're going to have to go all in. You're not going to want to go in just for the basic box because there's a chance you'll never see those expansions. There's a chance you'll never see the other creatures, the other expansions. You're bare minimum going to have to go in for $250 plus shipping. And if you really want to hedge your bets and you have the disposable income, you probably want to go in for the $400 or the $400 tier, whatever it is, which gives you basically everything available for the game. And the reason why you have to do that is because that's the only way you're going to guarantee that you're ever going to have a chance to get everything for this game, because there's a very good chance this game will not get the shelf presence it needs to have full further point of sales after the Kickstarter closes. So if you got the money, it's a no-brainer, but you're going to have to go all in. If you don't have the money, or if you think that spending $300 on a single game is a very large expense and you don't know if you can justify it, then you're basically going to be stuck in the same quandary I am. Luckily, I have a week to decide, and I'm going to sit down very hard and think about it and decide if I'm going to throw $300 at the Gods War, a game that I liked better than Cthulhu Wars, which is saying a lot because I have a heck of a lot of fun with Cthulhu Wars, or if I want to take half of that money, throw it towards Cthulhu Wars and get some more expansions for me. So a really tough decision. Luckily, I have a week to decide, but I can safely say that if I had the money, I had the disposable income, and I didn't mind, this would definitely be a game I would back. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed these opinions and these thoughts on this game. Sorry if I kind of rambled on, and I know this is a heck of a long video, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll be sure to answer them as quick as I can. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe. Click that like button because remember, those likes and subscriptions really help. And also, don't forget that I'm running this current deal for everybody. If I can get 5,000 subscribers on my channel, I'm going to do my personal top 50 games of all time. But that requires you to get the subscribers. Click that like button, click that subscribe button, and as always, thanks for watching.